Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the February 3rd City Council meeting. Madam City Clerk, can you please call roll?
Councilmember Warren.
Here.
Councilmember DeForest.
Here.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Holliday.
Here.
Mayor Lavelle.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. I've asked I've asked Councilwoman Warren to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And please stand for the invocation by Melissa Rustler from Murrieta United Methodist Church.
Please place your right hand over your heart to salute the most wonderful flag in the world. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here.
Let us pray. Great and gracious God, how thankful we are for the wonder that is each new day. We ask, God, that you would be with us in this time as we gather together, for we are in a place in our country where we are so divided. Help us to look and see and hear one another. Help us to listen and to be present with and for one another. Help us in this place, in the city of Murrieta, oh God, to be a people who demonstrate how we can have different opinions and still be respectful and caring. We thank you for those that you've called to lead us and pray your blessing upon them. We thank you, God, for those that you've called to protect us and watch over us, the first responders who keep us safe. And we're thankful, God, for the ability to raise our voice, to speak our minds, and to have the opportunity to listen to others. Be with us in this time, O God. And your people say together, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Ooh, I went back and I went way back. Yeah, I went way back. Gonna hit the wall back there.
Madam City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion and a second to approve the agenda. A motion by Councilwoman DeForest and a second by Councilwoman Warren. Please vote.
She beat me.
Motion carries unanimously, 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to our city manager update. What do you have for us, Justin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things from me. First of all, I want to make sure everybody knows that we are going to be closed here at City Hall Monday, February 16th in observance of President's Day. We will reopen normal hours the following Tuesday, the 17th. Also, along the lines of a schedule change for those that have been participating, we have a really wonderful regular event. It's called Coffee with the City, where we get together with the Chamber of Commerce, members of the Chamber, and open to the public. That has previously been occurring every month. Moving forward, we're going to start to present on alternate months. We've also changed the format a little bit, so that's a really good opportunity to get both general updates about things happening in the city, to ask questions, and generally there will also be a presentation on a topic of focus. So we'd encourage you to come to those. That will now be every other month, fourth Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. And right now, currently being held at Murrieta Hot Springs Resort, but before long, when we reopen the Murrieta Innovation Center, we will resume hosting the meetings there as we have before that facility was closed for renovation. Next, I'd like to invite up our Public Information Officer, Hilder Sam, who's going to give you a community update and tell you about some of the exciting things happening in Murrieta.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Honorable City Council. We have no shortage of excitement coming up this spring. First, although it's not a city event, I did want to mention the Taste of Soul that's coming up this weekend and will be held at Town Square Park. Then I want to give a heads up to restaurant owners. If you'd like to participate in the restaurant month that's coming up in March, you can scan the QR code that's up there on the screen, and the Chamber of Commerce will be putting on all kinds of fun things for Restaurant Month. More spring events are coming our way, including the race weekend, which includes the Tour de Murrieta, the Murrieta 5K, and then our first concert in the park of the year. And of course, the extravaganza, where we all try to not be run over by children in the park. Last but not least, I want to encourage everyone to check out some of our upcoming classes and sport events that are on our website at murrietaca.gov/classes. We have everything ranging from adult co-ed sports like kickball and softball. We have tiny toddlers doing gymnastics, and then we have seniors doing line dancing. So there's something for everyone, and our community services department is doing a great job of making sure that everyone is catered to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my updates.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Now is the time for governing body commissioning and committee reports by each council member. Reports shall not exceed 5 minutes, and this is just our chance to get to tell you guys where we've been and what we've been doing over the last 2 weeks. So we'll start off with Councilwoman Warren.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We're going to start off with, I attended the TNOW meeting, which is the Riverside Transportation Agency. Ridership for our system was up in December 4.4% from 2024. We had 3,180,211 boardings, which is up 2.2% from the fiscal year of 2025. Transit Equity Day is February the 4th. It's in honor of Rosa Parks' birthday. RTA is giving free rides on all local and Go Micro buses on February the 4th, which is tomorrow. I attended the Southwest Elected Leaders Collaborative meeting, and several of us are going to Sacramento on the 18th of February for the Ask trip. And I'm going to let Councilmember Stone elaborate on that a little bit more if she'd like to. Also, I attended the other TNOW meeting, and we had an election, and yours truly was named the chair for our TNOW meeting that is held the day before our RTA meetings. And for the last item on my governing body report, I attended the Special Commission workshop meeting for the RCTC last Thursday and Friday. Here's a few things that I'm going to highlight. The Coachella Valley Rail Award contract for 2-tier project level environmental document, station studies, and 30% design. The Commission approved advancing the Coachella Valley Rail project by authorizing a contract for Tier 2 CEQA and NEPA environmental reviews, station studies, up to 30% design with a total amount not to exceed, okay, hold on to your hats, people, $80.7 million, including the contingency. Also, during the workshop, 91 express lanes occupancy detection system results. It is helping to enforce HOV requirements by identifying and deterring non-compliant vehicles using the HOV lanes without the required number of occupants, strengthening the integrity of the express lanes. This is on the 91 freeway. Since implementation, it has identified approximately 25,000 cheaters, which relates in lower revenue. Measure A revenue and projected funding update. The Commission received an update on Measure A, noting that Measure A has generated nearly $5 billion countywide since its inception, with strong post-2020 growth driven largely by e-commerce. The update noted that Measure A is expected to generate $4.5 billion through 2039 sunset, including approximately $2 billion for Western Riverside County Highway projects, which is us. However, remaining Western County Highway projects are estimated to cost from $4 to $5 billion, resulting in a $2 to $3 billion funding gap for highway projects for Measure A. The Commission received an overview for the traffic relief plan. The Commission is considering whether to place a transportation funding measure on November 26th ballot, which could be a simple extension of Measure A, keeping the current 1/2 cent sales tax in Riverside County to help fund those much-needed projects, or a new measure to fund the traffic relief plan itself. All in all, it was an excellent workshop. We learned about the warehousing that's being put off or that's developing on the 215 freeway and the 10. And I asked was very involved in the workshop, and I also asked them to please work with WRCOG to find out what the future planning is of every city that is next to a freeway, to see where we can do some infrastructure first and build second. And so with that, I got a huge round of applause. That was a good thing. Government body announcements. I attended the firefighter stair climb and the Fill the Boot fundraiser. Always a great day to see everybody support our fire department. I attended the Knowles Mini State of the City presentation, and if you'll note, I think that's what Scott's going to look like when he's made out of wax. You know, he just has that look to him there. And if you see, is there another picture? Oh, I missed a picture. It was Brian Crawford doing this and Justin doing this, and I can only imagine what that conversation was about. It was a great day for the Knolls, and everybody had lots of questions, and they learned a lot more about our city. I also had the honor of attending the celebration of life for Mr. Mike Mason, who is was a very involved and dedicated volunteer for the Field of Honor, a big Rotarian in both Temecula and Murrieta, and he will be missed. A life ending too soon. And along with my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Holliday, I attended the 15th Annual Justice Matters Dinner regarding human trafficking. Mayor, that concludes my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Warren. Next up, we have Councilmember DeForest.
Thank you, Mayor Lavelle. I'm going to defer my governing body report until next time, and then I will make it less than the 5 minutes.
That's a record. Moving on, Councilwoman Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Southwest Leaders Elective Collaborative, and as Councilmember Warren said, that we are going to be traveling to Sacramento for the Ask. The 6 cities have been meeting for 2 years, and we wanted Sacramento to kind of understand Southwest Riverside County before we had the Ask, and so that is what September 18th is all about. I attended WRCOG yesterday. Some interesting information. It appears that Caltrans has allocated $32 million to the Border Climate Hazard Resilience Plan. $32 million. So what does that mean? They want to build a pathway easy to get into Mexico, and they want to make sure that in case the sea rises or there is flooding. And here we are, been asking for 14 years to have Keller Road get out of the environmental process so we can raise the funds to put Keller Road in. And 14 years ago was probably, I would say, maybe 10 to 15 million. When I was elected, it was probably 20 million. And God knows in the future how many more millions Keller Road is going to be. In addition, we would like to synchronize all the traffic signals in Southwest Riverside County between all 6 cities. We believe that that would help mitigate some of the traffic. Caltrans refuses to give us control of certain intersections, ingress, egress of the freeways. Until that happens, we cannot collaborate on prioritizing and synchronizing our lights, which is just a little bit of something that would help mitigate some of the traffic. So part of going to Sacramento in February will be part of the Ask, but what I love about our Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez is she is ready to present legislation that will give us that local control. But it goes back to the $32 million that I just reported from Caltrans that's making it easier for travel into Mexico. So I wanted our Assistant City Manager, who's been so instrumental in guiding the Southwest Elected Leaders Collaborative, to understand that this is such a fight. In addition to something that you're going to love as well, and also Councilmember Warren, is Colleen Wallace is a council member from the city of Banning. she represents Sandag on WRCOG. And when she gave the report yesterday, I had turned to Chris Gray and said, she's standing right there, Mr. Gray. Are we not going to ask her to assist us with Sandag? And he gave the approval. She and I spoke this morning. She even has a connection with Caltrans, but I asked her, no, I want you to hold off because we're going to do our due diligence in Sacramento. But she's going to be sitting, or she actually sits next to the executive director of Sandag, and she's going to be presenting that ask. And Sandag is the San Diego, like WRCOG for Riverside County. We need Sandag at the table to help implement the infrastructure that's needed since we're on the border of San Diego and Riverside County. So that concludes my governing body. And then we had an update on our code enforcement subcommittee, and Councilmember Holliday and I and our team, our assistant city manager, will be presenting our findings in the future to our fellow colleagues. And then if you scroll, Madam City Clerk, you can see all the other events that I had participated in, 100 Women event. Councilmember Holliday and I did a tour of St. Martha's Food Pantry. We attended the Chamber's Mega Mixer, and yesterday we planted a tree on behalf of Beth Emet congregation. And about planting trees in the Jewish faith is about life. And so there are 40 designated trees in the next 40 years that they plan to plant at Los Alamos Park. And that concludes my governing body announcement report, Mr. Mayor.
That was down to the second. Literally 1 second. Good job. I've never seen that. Good job. Mayor Pro Tem Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as Councilwoman Stone mentioned, we wrapped up our ad hoc meeting for the code enforcement. We'll be bringing those results to you, our recommendations to the full council here shortly, and we'll be happy to have that behind us, I think. Yesterday, I attended the Regional Conservation Authority, also known as RCA. The major thing I have to report out of the Murrieta Hills Specific Plan, which is on the northeast side of town in the mayor's district, is slowly moving forward. He expects to break ground this summer. It's single-family homes, but one of the milestones that we had to get past was fee credits for land that he's donating basically to the RCA and to the city. And the amount of land that he is not building on, that he's turning over, was valued at $34,095,753 and change. He's only going to use about $3 million of that credit for fees he would have paid. So we're getting a net $31+ million of benefit from that project that they are not building on. So that was really good news. No one had any questions. We had a great team of Murrieta staff working on that and a great team of RCA staff working on that to make sure there were no questions. So that was pleasant to see. For my governing body announcements, I attended with a coffee with the city with the mayor for the first time this year, and I thought that went very well. Along with Councilmember Stone, we toured Martha's Pantry, who's looking for a new location for their pantry. They have quite the operation there, and they feed hundreds of people every month, families that wouldn't have food otherwise. So it's a great organization. We're happy to support them. I think just you, Councilmember Stone, was at the swearing in of our new police officers. Yes. So it's always nice to see. I think we had 5, Chief?
2 officers, a dispatcher, and a police aide.
2 officer, dispatcher, and a police aide. Yeah, it's, are we full yet?
We're 1 short.
1 short. Okay, so we have another new officer swearing in coming soon. And then the Mega Mixer, which is always good up at the Storm Stadium. All the chambers come out, all the business come out. It's worthwhile to attend that. Along with Councilwoman Warren, we did attend the Justice Matters dinner. They focus on human trafficking, and it's kind of like anti-Semitism. It's amazing to me we're still dealing with some of these things that I was exposed to 40, 50 years ago. And it's sad that we have to have organizations like this, but they're doing a great job in getting people in the right places to try and combat that. And then we did plant a tree yesterday. Well, we took a picture of us shoveling dirt. They planted the tree. Actually, Murrieta staff planted the tree. But yeah, they plant a new tree every year. This was the second year. And so they have 2 trees there, and they expect to have 40 more, probably long after I'm gone. And that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You know, the Murrieta Hills plan was one of the more memorable things when I was on the Planning Commission. Had to have been 6 years ago now. That is such a cool thing to see happen, and from the multiple different layers, happy to see that success story with that land preservation. The product is going to be great addition. I'm a little biased. It's in my district. All I have is coyotes for residents now, but hopefully people will be living in those beautiful homes when they come. So a couple things. I didn't have any governing body meetings that I attended, but just to highlight a few of the things, I did attend the, is it a mini state of the city at the Knolls? Yes. What do you call it? A mini, yeah. Good time. I had actually never, ever been inside that community, driven through there. It was cool to see a part of the city I had never seen. So thank you for the invite. The St. Martha's Food Pantry. Lots of food, lots of candy. Had to slap Ron's hands a few times from getting in the candy. No, just kidding. Great effort. The things that church does for the local community, they feed 300 families a month. Yeah, amazing effort. And I hope they find a spot that they can expand to, because the more they can do for the community, the better the community will be, for sure. The chamber mixer, always fun. This year, exceptionally great weather at the Storm Stadium. We are in February, and I think it was 75 degrees all day long, and just beautiful all outside. It was really cool to see everyone there, and all the businesses we have in the local community. And then the Coffee with the City, first one of the year. Although we're going to be doing them every other month, I think the plan next year so far is every week, right? No, I'm totally kidding, totally kidding. Happy to be there with my colleague, Mr. Holliday here, and the city staff. You know, they always make our job easy, communicating, getting out there with the community, and giving you guys as much information as we can in the appropriate way. And that's all I did. That's all my 2 weeks. Now we're moving on to public comments. This is a time for public comment. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and this is for non-agenda items for tonight. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cam Tai.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm nervous. Yes. My name is Cam. Last name is Tai. I live in 23482 Avery Avenue in Murrieta, California. My party is a stepchild between the Murrieta and Woodmore. Right? I'm here to notify the city and Murrieta. I don't know if you guys did to help me out or not. I really don't know. I'm concerned about right now, and they build 163 condominium units my next door. I love that. It's beautiful. I like it. But the thing I'm concerned about it, when they build like that, they build a slope. It's high. And then without the protection, erosion. The last month or December, the raining event, the debris and the sand falling down to almost my party, because the wall is about 6 foot high. They almost fill up 2 3 or to 1/3 to 2 3. Without the protection of my friend, it will flow it over. It's lucky. But I don't know if the next month or March, if the rain event will come up and blow it over. I really don't know. It's God knows. Right, I'm here to let you guys know, to help me out, to send the people out there to look at it, to let them know, hey, correct it. Put a protection for prevent erosion, the dirt coming out next rainy season. So that's why I'm concerned.
Thank you. Justin, can we determine if that's in our jurisdiction? And then if it is, we could maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some correspondence here, so we'll be able to follow up.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Kim Garish.
Mayor, Council. I'm Kim Garish. I'm the Executive Director of Michelle's Place Cancer Resource Center. Mayor, you forgot about going to the open house of Tiffany Sinclair, our brand new breast surgeon at United Medical. We haven't had one in a long time, and super stoked to have her in our community.
That's called sometimers.
I get it. But obviously that's my business, so very big deal. Thanks for being there and supporting her. Excited about that. But I'm here to say thank you to this council and the councils before you. We are celebrating 25 years in our community serving cancer patients and their families. So I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us and the probably millions of cancer patients and their families that we've served. And you guys have helped make that happen. Michelle's Place first three homes were here in Murrieta, and the council and the city have contributed significantly to our success and the ability to serve. So we just brought a certificate of appreciation for celebrating 25 years. We're doing a joint mixer, I guess, or chamber mixer with Murrieta and Temecula later in the year. So I hope you guys will come. We had our annual meeting on Friday, this last Friday. So all the good stuff about what we've been doing, what we hope to achieve this coming year. And then we have our 25th anniversary gala on the 21st of February. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you for what you do in the community.
John Leonard.
Good evening, Council. My name is John Leonard. I am a Murrieta resident, and my colleague Greg Langworthy and I would like to introduce the Council to a grassroots citizens committee called the Riverside Election Integrity Team, or REIT. We're not asking for the Council to take any action, nor are we here to cast blame. Our intent is to inform you of the work taking place, our findings, voice possible solutions, and moving forward to keep you informed on a regular basis. Starting with background history of the team, I'll explain the early challenges discovered and a constitutional perspective as to the responsibility we all share in ensuring our elections are reliable. Some 6 years ago, a Murrieta resident, Yvette Anthony, now deceased, was a volunteer observer of the ballot counting process at the Registrar of Voters. In the primary elections of 2022, she accepted the position of county lead for the Election Integrity Project California, a nonprofit dedicated to accurate elections and clean voter rolls. It was at this time that many of the current REIT members, citizens volunteering to be observers, were introduced to Yvette. Yvette conducted our training and taught us her method of auditing. Ballot processing is something everyone should have some experience doing. It is eye-opening, to say the least. There are several moving parts, and basically ballots are cast in 4 ways. Mail-in ballots delivered by the Postal Service, drop box deliveries, in-person ballots cast at polling stations, and military ballots received by fax. All ballots are delivered to the Register of Voters in Moreno Valley and eventually are fed into tabulation machines. A dilemma soon presented itself to Yvette. The sum of ballots that entered the building never equaled the number of votes tabulated by the machines. Frustration turned to alarm. How could the registrar report election results when discrepancies existed? Furthermore, how were the Board of Supervisors to certify these elections using discrepant information? Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution guarantees each state a Republican form of government. As a participatory system of self-governance, a republic relies on having accurate elections and an involved citizenry. All elected officials take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Ordinary citizens are commissioned by the preamble to, quote, preserve the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, close quote. What better way for citizens to preserve their liberty than by claiming oversight of the elections of their representatives who are sworn to protect their rights? It is impossible for free people and their electeds to claim liberty if they can't rely on accurate election results. So at this time now, the next speaker will be Greg Langworthy, and he will present to you recent findings for elections and actions that the team has initiated. Thank you so much.
So I think I have some slides that I'll read off of. So here's basically our goal of our team, is to have accurate elections in our county. In order to have accurate elections, you need the following 4 things, and I think these are kind of common sense. The voter rolls must be accurate. National Voter Registration Act, votes counted must be from eligible voters. U.S. Constitution, system must be highly accurate. Only 1 ballot error in every 125,000 ballots. That's California law. That's also federal law. And ballots cast must reconcile with votes counted. So when we first started meeting with the registrar of voters, that last one is what we asked specifically. Are you able to reconcile the number of ballots that are cast in the election with the number of votes counted by the vote counting machine? And we were told at that time that they did. But once we started asking questions, can you show us how you did that, we could not get an answer. So that's why we started auditing ourselves. And the next 4 slides will give you the results of these audits. So if you can go to the next slide. This is basically how we did it. Let's see, do I know how much time I have? I don't see the timer up there. So, got it. Okay, can I see it as the, so basically the audit is very simple. Up there you see pictures of ballot statements. There's a ballot statement from the post office, a ballot statement from Dropbox, and a ballot statement from the vote center. You can get all these from a public records request from our ROV, and I want to give credit to our ROV. We may be one of the only counties where we're actually able to get these documents. These documents reveal the results of the next 4 slides. The first audit we did, we found that there were 33,888 more votes counted than ballots cast. Go ahead to the next one. The next election, we couldn't get all the ballot statements, but there was a discrepancy of 5,550 votes. The next one, 2015, these were the small elections for Natasha Johnson. And then the last one, this is probably the most stark. In the Prop 50 election, we found there were 45,896 more votes counted by the machines than ballots cast. Because of these numbers, we're going to get a special meeting next Tuesday at 1:30 up at the Board of Supervisors, where Art is going to try to explain these numbers. I don't think he'll be able to, but I don't know if it's his fault. And that's why the cybersecurity team of the county is looking into possible cyber intrusions into our machines. Is that true? We don't know. Our audits really beg that question, but we're trying to get to the bottom of it. The supervisors have not ignored our concerns. Thank you.
Appreciate the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Carol Haynes and Barbara Tilton. One of them is going to speak on both of their behalfs, and they're requesting 6 minutes.
And they said I had 3 minutes. I said it'll take me that long to get to them. My name is Carol Haynes. I'm a Murrieta resident for the last 12 years, almost 13, and I've been going to the senior center all that time. There's an organization within the senior center called the XYZ, which stands for Extra Years of Zest. 25 years old it is, this organization. And we put on a luncheon once a month for the seniors. It's special. We put on tablecloths, centerpieces, we have entertainment. It's a home-cooked meal. And it's once a month, 2 hours. And now, for the last 4 years, the city has been requiring us to have a liability insurance policy. It started out 4 years ago as being $200 for the year. no problem. But Randon Lane, at that point, who was the mayor, said that he had discretionary funds and that he wanted to pay that through that. So that was great. The next month, or the next year, we went ahead and paid it. It was only a couple $100s a month. Well, now it's $450 a month. And that's a big amount for us. The lunches we serve, we only charge $6 for. We're nonprofit. We're cooking it ourselves. We're not using the kitchen to cook. So there's no liability there. We've never in the 25 years had a single complaint or accusation or anything like that. And so what I'm asking you is if it's possible that we could get on the senior centers or the city's insurance there as an umbrella. There's only a couple of organizations at the center that are having to take this liability insurance. The rest seems to be covered by the senior center. So if that would be the best case scenario. And if that's not possible, then I'm asking if you guys can subsidize us some. I don't want, this lunch is very important to a lot of people. During the pandemic, when we had the stay-at-home orders, I took the list of people that we had and I sat down and I called every single one of them just to see how they were doing. And it was like, oh my God, are you calling to tell us there's another lunch? And I realized how many people are alone and by themselves, and this is their monthly social event. So I don't want to see anything happen to that. So I'm just asking for your help. Thank you.
Thank you. I did get your email. I have been poking around. I wasn't familiar with the lunch, just FYI. Can we have a conversation on this? Or
Yeah, I think initially we'd probably reach out from our risk department and just see what's going on and explore options. Yeah, we'd be happy to follow up.
We have your contact, and I am going to respond to your email. I just needed some more information.
Thank you.
So please stand by. We'll try to figure something out.
That concludes public comments.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Moving on to the consent calendar. Are there any requests from City Council to pull any consent items for discussion or recuse? Seeing none. Madam City Clerk, are there any members of the public requesting to speak on a consent calendar item? Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion and a second. Motion by Councilwoman DeForest, second by Mayor Pro Tem Holliday. Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously, 5-0.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. And moving on, our discussion item. We have a presentation and review of the Murrieta's fiscal year 2024-25, annual comprehensive financial report and single audit report. Where's Javier?
Yeah.
Oh. All right. Good afternoon.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff, and members of the public. I'm Ashley Lopez, the accounting manager, and here with me today is Jeffrey McKinnon. He's a supervisor with Rogers Anderson Malady Scott LLP, also known as RAMPS. That's the city's independent audit firm. Tonight, Jeff will present the results of the city's 24-25 annual comprehensive financial report and the single audit report. This is an audit of the federally funded programs. The preparation and development of this complex report are the result of the cooperation and dedication of city staff, as well as the diligent work of the entire finance department. I also appreciate the professionalism of RAMPS for conducting a thorough and comprehensive audit. One objective of the financial update is to report on the city's financial position and operating results. In accordance with Statement of Auditing Standards 114 and 115, the city's independent audit firm must report the audit results to those charged with governing the agency. And before I turn the presentation over to Jeffrey, I am pleased to share that the audit firm has issued an unmodified, also known as clean, opinion on the city's financial statements. Additionally, the audit resulted in no findings for either the financial statements or the single audit report. Because we have had a clean audit with no findings for the past 5 years, along with meeting other criteria, the City of Murrieta is considered a low-risk auditee. So now I'll pass it over to Jeffrey.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. First, I would like to thank the council for continuing to have Rams on as your auditors. This is, I believe, our 3rd year with the City of Murrieta, and it's just always a pleasure working with Ashley and the rest of your finance team here. The sense of urgency they have in, responding to all our requests and questions we have is just really commendable. So I'll begin by explaining our audit objective, and that's to express an opinion on management's financial statements. Now, while we assist in compiling the financial report, such as the schedules and notes, we have to stress that the contents of that report is the responsibility of management. So after gathering all of our evidence, we're able to provide reasonable assurance, not absolute, as that would require retracing every single transaction down to the penny, which isn't always practical. We're providing reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement or a misstatement that's serious enough that would affect decision making. And then finally, we render our opinion in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So throughout our audit, we're following multiple standards, the main ones being generally accepted auditing standards, generally accepted government auditing standards, and uniform guidance in the case of the single audit over federal awards. There's different responsibilities that are carried by the city and by us as auditors. So management of the city is again responsible for the financial statements. They're responsible for maintaining complete, accurate financial records. And they're also responsible for maintaining a framework of internal control, including controls that help prevent and detect fraud. As the governing body, the City Council has a fiduciary duty to the City of Murrieta and is also responsible for ensuring management fulfills its obligations in regard to internal control and financial reporting. As an auditor, we're responsible for obtaining that reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. So this is a very long and in-depth process. It's split into a few main phases. The first is what we call the interim portion, where we come out usually in the summertime. We're meeting with city staff, talking about their policies and procedures. We're also performing tests over internal control processes, over various accounting functions. And then the second portion is what we call the year-end portion, where we come back out in the fall. And here we're actually testing the amounts that make up your financial statements. So we're confirming balances with the bank, looking at invoices, payroll registers, things like that to make sure that all the numbers tick and tie as they should. So we're examining all of this evidence. We're assessing the accounting principles applied by management, any estimates that they make, and just evaluating the overall financial statement presentation in accordance with US GAAP. And then finally, we express our opinion. So as Ashley mentioned, our final opinion is unmodified, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. We found that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. Any significant accounting policies have been applied consistently. Management's estimates appear reasonable, and all necessary disclosures are properly reflected. Some other required reporting that you would have received is what we call the GAGIS report. So under government auditing standards, we're required to communicate to you our considerations of internal control, and that letter is also where we would report any deficiencies or weaknesses in internal control, but we found none. Then what we call the SAS 114 letter, that has kind of like a broad catch-all of various topics we're required to communicate to you, such as significant estimates, risks, or whether we had any difficulty working with management, which we didn't. The single audit report under uniform guidance, here we found the city to be in compliance with its federal awards, and that report has also been uploaded to the federal government as required. And then we also performed an agreed upon procedures engagement over your appropriations limit, where we essentially recalculated the limit and verified that the city did not exceed that. With that, I'd like to thank you again, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about the audit process.
Thank you for the presentation. Is this what winning feels like? You're gonna get a money team hat in Mayweather over here. Amazing job. I mean, like it seems to be very, patternistic that these types of things happen frequent for the finance team. So great job. Thanks for the presentation. I'll bring it up to council for any questions, starting with Councilmember Warren. No, anybody?
Congratulations.
Yes,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Ron does not have a question?
Oh my God.
That's how good you guys are. This guy does not have a question about Excel or numbers. Go figure. I'd like to call, I think it's a receive and file only, so I'll call for a motion on the receive and file. And a second, please.
Comment right.
Please vote. I have a mover. I have a motion by Councilwoman DeForest and a second by, I think, Mayor Pro Tem Holliday. Yeah. Please vote.
And with no public comment, Mr. Mayor, motion carries unanimously 5-0.
It's gonna be a long year.
Lori had distracted me.
Oh, she did?
A little bit.
I can't imagine.
Thank you. Next up, we have a workshop.
Look at him running to come down here. You sit there, you sit there, you sit there.
Hillside updates. We have the A-team here, looks like.
Ready, camera? Oh, okay. Yep, okay. So we're slowly getting up, but wanted to say good afternoon, council. And just to recap a little bit for you, we were here a few weeks back talking about landscaping and retaining walls, just to jog your memory. So there were some follow-up questions that staff needed more direction on from the city council, and that's our primary focus tonight, is to circle back to that topic and hopefully be able to check the box and move forward. What we've also included in the material for you for this evening is a topic that council indicated it wanted to have further discussion on, which was the topic of developed versus undeveloped properties, and whether or not the hillside standards should apply to properties once they've been developed. So we've got that queued up in the presentation. It's really up to the city council if you want to tackle that project as we move through the landscaping and the retaining wall questions. So we'll leave it up to council's direction on how to move forward with that. And then also, if I could, Mayor Pro Tem, I wanted to circle back about your comment on the Murrieta Hill specific plan. It also means that 600 acres of land have been permanently conserved as part of that. So appreciate the recognition for that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Chris Tracy, Senior Planner. Also have Jarrett Ramaya, our Deputy Director, and then Cameron Bett from our IT department, who's somewhere. Anyway, go ahead, Chris, take it away.
We're working on our mapping connections. All right. Well, thank you for the introduction, David. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Chris Tracy. For those of you out in the audience, I'm a Senior Planner here with our Advanced Planning Division. Today, I'll be providing a workshop presentation on wrapping up some of our unfinished focused hillside topics, including retaining walls and landscaping. And then we're also going to cover a new topic, developed versus undeveloped conditions as it relates to hillside areas, and explore policy options as it relates to this topic. And I kind of just covered that. I just wanted to mention in your packet, Appendix 1, Attachment 8 has a side-by-side comparison of landscaping and wall and fencing standards, just so that you have that on hand. All right, so Closing the loop from last time, these were some of the items where we had consensus. Providing flexibility with defined option while providing some specifics as it relates to retaining walls. Retaining wall designs and standards should be implemented on a citywide basis. Colors should generally be muted as they relate to retaining walls, and exact shades and blends should be defined up front to ensure a consistent and desirable appearance. Continuing with this, retaining walls over 6 feet in height may be too high in some situations on a citywide basis. Having landscaping retaining wall tiers is a desired design element. Landscaping is important for the council. Establishing larger planting sizes earlier in the process is a desired outcome. Rural residential versus tract home development, front yard areas needs to be clarified differently, and that may be something as part of a different code update in the future. Earth tone colors are a desired design element for hillside areas as they relate to structures as an alternative to landscape screening if we're in a high fire zone. And I do have the fire department here today to speak to those items, as well as our city's landscape consultant, so we can kind of help work through those things. And our first unfinished topic area is retaining walls. And just to kind of highlight, these are the different types of walls we talked about last time. We have geogrid walls, CMU walls kind of on the right side upper corner, and then keystone walls. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but this is just kind of the highlights from our last meeting. So our first policy question comes here. If an applicant needs to propose a retaining wall taller than 6 feet, this is desired council height, maximum height, baseline from the discussion last time, should there be a review process created so that it goes before a decision maker? For example, maybe in those situations it goes to planning commission or a director or something along those lines. And then I could stop right here if we want to take it from there and talk about it more.
I'll look for head nods there.
Well, since you're looking at me.
Well, you looked at me.
You're the former planning commissioner. What would be your recommendation, sir?
What are my options? So when the application comes in, what would you be reviewing?
So right now, we'd be reviewing the whole chapter 1624, which is our hillside development standards, if it's in a hillside area. We do have several projects in the pipeline right now, actually, as a matter of fact. We'd be looking at grading, proposed grading techniques, what retaining walls they're proposing and where, fire access, is the fire equipment going to be able to make it to the site, things of that nature. And also landscaping as well.
Yeah, if I could just add on to what Chris had indicated. So within the development code currently, I think there's discretion given to the planning director to determine if walls that needed to be higher than what our standard is, should be allowed. And so if you wanted to have, kind of a check and balance, against that, then you could have the planning or designate the planning commission as the body that reviews, walls over our or whatever the height limit is going to be.
Okay, thanks for clarity. It looks like I got some people in the queue now. So Councilwoman DeForest.
Thank you, Mayor. So you said that our development code says that there's the check and balances that we currently have over 6 foot is you. Yeah. So, we certainly could push that to our planning commission, especially since they could look at the various different types of walls and, would it be up to them to say which kind of wall would look the best for our city? Or how would we have some parameters to give them on what we moving forward from there?
So I think with the parameters that you've previously agreed on in terms of colors and design, you've got some landscaping issues to clear up, for us tonight with respect to the walls. So with those standards in place, it would provide additional guidance to staff and/or the planning commission about how to appropriately review a wall that wouldn't necessarily meet the height standards.
All right, well, I don't think that we're overusing our planning commission currently. So I think that it would be very good for our planning commission to be able to look at this and look at it in depth and have their opinion moving forward with a final review by you if they choose something that's absolutely crazy, right? a pink wall. No, I'm just kidding, just kidding.
Well, you would
Yeah.
want the review to go up and not necessarily back to me. So if I understood you correctly, the Planning Commission should have the final say
Right.
on the
Right.
design.
Perfect, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 6 foot's currently the maximum in the code,
That's correct, in the hillside area. Yep.
but the current code allows discretion for the director to exceed that?
Yeah, there's some latitude there right now.
There is.
Because I have no problem, obviously, if with whether terracing or landscape element that has plants in the wall or something that's aesthetically pleasing, I have no problem having it heard at the director level. I guess my suggestion might be is that an appeal process to the Planning Commission might be a secondary step. Because last thing I would want to do is somebody comes in and says, I want to put an 8-foot wall, I'm going to do 2 4-foot separated by a 3-foot planning area, and they need to go to Planning Commission for that. It's going to take a lot of time. So I'd rather it be director level approval, and then if the applicant doesn't like it, he has the Planning Commission to appeal to, and then it can move forward much more efficient. Thank you.
Can we talk about what that director level review looks like and what they're even going to be reviewing in that process?
So the guidance in the code right now says that I have to make a finding that the modifications won't adversely impact adjoining properties and that will not be contrary to public health, safety, and welfare. So those are pretty broad parameters. And so, we would consider, things like drainage and, slope stability and obviously aesthetics. And that's where it can get fuzzy. But, hopefully with these guiding principles, we'll be able to kind of zero in on
Without that process in place with the director level, would those things you just mentioned be missed already in the application for the retaining wall? Would it need that, I guess redundancy would be the word for it?
So they wouldn't be missed, but I think it changes the leverage, if you will. So it becomes, it could become a negotiation, between staff and the applicant, versus having, some clear direction to applicants about what they need to do to, have taller walls.
Okay. I think, are you back in the queue, Mr. Holliday?
No.
Are you good? Okay. Councilwoman DeForest?
No.
No?
Lori.
No?
Yeah.
No. That's you, you're back in? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Stone, sorry.
Thank you very much. Can you clarify something for me on slide 7? The retaining walls, these here,
Sorry.
can they choose from one of these suggested walls?
We can incorporate that into the code, I think.
I think that's really important.
Kind of different options and provide examples.
Yes.
I think that's something that.
Thank you so much. And I absolutely agree with Councilmember Holliday. I think that, listen, time is money for these developers. We know how slow government can work. And if we could expedite a decision at staff level, I agree with Councilmember Holliday. I believe it should go to staff before it goes to to Planning Commission. That's all. That was just a comment, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you, going to do Lisa?
Now we're going to go to Councilwoman DeForest. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just clarifying, so it would go to the director, then it would go to, if they were going to do an appeal process, then it would go to our planning commissioners. That seems like it would expedite the process quite a bit, and I agree with that, so.
Thank you for that. And Councilwoman Warren.
What? I don't know how to phrase this. I'm trying to come up with the right way to say it. Okay, so you're at an impasse with the developer on a wall. If we do it this way, he or she has to ask for it to come to the planning for further discussion? Or is it, would it be your recommendation to do that? How would that go? What would be the best way to handle that?
So if we came to an impasse
Right.
like that, the municipal code allows me to defer an issue to the planning commission. And so that would likely be the course that takes place.
Okay, I just want to understand the process, how that would come about. Okay, thank you very much. And would there be a time limit on that to go to the planning commission? I mean, so that it's not pushed out?
Sure. I mean, we always try to do it as quickly as we can. And so, I mean, I would say like 60 to 90 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Warren. Yeah, I would just, when we do public comment, maybe with some of the developers in the room would have, an angle we're not thinking about here, just to consider that. So that's all for now. You can move on. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Should we open up to public comment yet, or? Okay, no, stay on this one item.
We're going to hit the individual ones before. Okay. Do we have any public comments on this one?
Yeah, Cass and Klein.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you.
2 weeks from today, February 17th, the fire horse year starts. You're the fire horse. Hopefully, we can be done beating this dead horse from 2021. I wasn't going to speak specifically on this until the comment came up, but my understanding is this wall issue is citywide, and it's not limited to just developers. This could be for an individual custom home builder. So as an example, Councilmember DeForest, you've got a large hillside in the front of your house, and if you guys ever wanted to build a wall over 6 feet, you'd be having to deal with more than just an over-the-counter application at Building and Safety. You'd be paying an application fee, and potentially, as Mr. Chantarangsu said, 60 or 90 days if you came to an impasse with staff to get to Planning Commission, and that's if Planning Commission has a quorum and if a Planning Commission meeting is scheduled. So, as I've stood before previous council and this council over the last 5 years, we are going way deep in a rabbit hole on details that have gotten so far away from how we came to this hillside ordinance thing is just incredible to me. So I think you're on the right path in terms of not having it go automatically to the Planning Commission, but we've got to think much broader. We're getting so deep into the weeds, it's incredible to me, so thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. Any other public comments?
Seeing none.
Okay. Oh. Mr. Long.
One comment and then a point of clarification. I believe the council asked some really good questions the last time we talked about this, and it seemed that the concern was this was a visual issue. They didn't want a monstrous wall up against a curb and whatnot. So in the code, if it can't be seen by anybody, what difference does it make? Whether it's screening, those were great examples, or in the general location. There are several areas in the city where people have large acreage that buffers them and natural habitats where people are 40 acres away that would never see a 30-foot wall in a depression. So maybe we point that out in the code that the visual effect is what is guiding this policy. And then I heard two things. I heard it was a citywide policy, and I think I heard staff said this only applied to the hillside area. So I'd like clarification of where this applies, if it's citywide or if it's just the hillside.
There's a question coming up on that type of thing.
Okay,
as well.
so I'm going to beat you to the punch, because now you're talking about placing more restrictions in areas that less people would see, yet this is a visual policy. So think about that too.
Thank you. Any other public comments? I'll bring it back to council. Any questions, comments before we move on? So for this one, there was a question. Yeah, we got you. Okay, moving on.
All right, well, that dovetails nice into the next question. Should the retaining wall standards apply on a citywide basis? Should we have a different maximum height in the hillside versus citywide? or in the other parts of the city, I should say. We kind of just talked about that, but maybe open it up for discussion.
Okay, that dovetails nicely. Mr. Holliday, you're up.
Thanks to Mr. Long's psychic ability. So currently in the code, what is the max height for anybody?
It can be the same as the structure if it's beyond the, well, within the beyond the setback. So you could have a tall wall if it's in the, and that's outside hillside. In the hillside area, you can have 2 tiers of 6 feet in height max, and you have to have 6 feet of separation horizontally for landscaping.
In the current code?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But in the rest of the city, the max is the height of the roof?
No, the structure. So in the zone, so if you have a 30-foot height allowance, you could do up to a 30-foot high wall potentially, as long as it's beyond the setback.
A 30-foot wall in a residential area?
That's correct.
That's crazy.
That's what we currently have. So,
It's a very tall wall.
Are we
Trying to visualize that.
Are we going to look at this separately for the entire city code, or are we starting to, as Mr. Klein said, start merging these two together and looking at citywide codes versus hillside ordinance codes? Because that seems to be a much larger task.
yeah, and that's part of this exercise. So we were trying to, while we're going to centralize the retaining wall standards, because there's a lot of crossover. That was kind of the approach. But, some of the questions tonight kind of, go through that type of questioning on, where do we want to apply what and how.
And you say retaining walls, can it also be just a freestanding wall?
I think we could define those separately.
Are they currently?
We have a fencing section. Those are defined separately. But we do need to do some cleanup on defining a freestanding wall versus a retaining wall in there.
Yeah, because if this is only applying to retaining walls and you're retaining 30 feet of dirt, that's a different story. You're not going to be retaining dirt between 2 homes. It's going to be behind a home.
Right.
Not in the setback. And if you have a slope back there, you probably want to retain some of that dirt, regardless of how high it is.
Right.
So I think that's a whole separate question than what we're dealing with here today. And I really would rather not merge those two.
And maybe we could just sidebar those items and
That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
See what my colleagues say. But yeah, I would leave this. Let's just focus on the hillside because that's kind of a unique perspective than citywide.
So just to maybe refocus the conversation, so with the hillside, you're talking about a potential of up to a 12-foot retaining wall with separation between the 2 6-foot levels. And so
you said that you have discretion to change that in the code currently.
So I anticipated that we were going to keep these issues together, and I should have clarified that. So in non-hillside areas currently, I have that discretion, but not in the hillside areas. But as we were on the path of merging the non-hillside and the hillside, areas together, I would have had that discretion. But under the hillside regulations, it's more prescriptive.
We can add
I would suggest adding the language to the hillside ordinance, and if we're going to revisit the whole code of retaining walls and fences and that kind of stuff for the citywide stuff in the future, that would be a separate discussion.
And get rid of the 30-foot wall.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeForest?
Thank you, Mayor. I just think that those types of walls, whether be hillside or citywide, really has different impacts completely on the situation. So when we're looking at the hillside, we're looking at the visual impact of those walls. And like we talked before, we don't want this monstrosity. We want something aesthetic for, our community. So I think because there is such different impacts of that, I think that we should not go down that rabbit hole as well, and that we should stay with hillside, we should stay with visual, we should stay with the impact to what people are seeing driving around the community. So, thank you for that.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Stone?
I just want to piggyback on Councilmember Holliday. I agree with him. I think we need to address the hillside differently than the citywide, and I think we should go back to the citywide and address that 30-foot wall for a subdivision. But I do agree that you should have discretion, and if that needs to be added into the policy, I think it's really, really important. And again, there were some incidences that have to be accountable for, and that is, number one, obviously the visual, and we've already clarified the colors, but when it comes to, the construction and with all the different scenarios, it should be based on your opinion of what is best for the architecture of it, and then also the visual. And so that's just my comments. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, we do have to be a little bit careful because under state law, we have to define things now. We can't be as subjective as we used to have that latitude. So if we provide examples and point to it, I think that's a solution. We could say, hey, no, it's in our code. This is an option for you.
The speaker that came up earlier in public comments, while I really don't know the particulars of that case, I know that staff was out there. I think Jeff was out in the foyer talking with him. And again, here's a prime example. I mean, you might have to get tough because, again, we don't want any catastrophes happening. And so this is your expertise here, and making sure, number one, that the infrastructure is put in place, but also the visual. So I think, again, it should be your guidance on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any public speakers on this item?
Mr. Klein?
Mr. Klein.
I'm glad to hear that it sounds like you're going to separate citywide in this, but Councilmember Holliday, I don't think that this only talks about residential, right? It's citywide and it's all land uses. So let's focus now on some of the last best pieces, some of the commercial land that remains. There's a piece of property on the north side of Murrieta Hot Springs Road where Jackson terminates. There's a vacant parcel that's been there forever. Very valuable. Why hasn't it developed? Because the home that sits at the back of that property is probably 30 feet above it, and that land is going to have to be retained. So we're going to have a wall there if and when. Let's look at some of the other from on Jefferson, on Elm Street north to Guava, and what the city's doing on the Madison corridor. When that road starts to get built, developer interest is going to start to happen. And the properties on Madison are going to be much higher than the properties that front Jefferson. And you're either going to lose that land because you're going to have to do a 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope, or you're going to be able to retain it much higher than this. So while generally we like you to think broadly and define things in the code, I think we need to start thinking about some of the last best pieces in town and how are we writing the code so that a developer has assurance and that so those valuable pieces of property that are not residential, that are going to be commercial or industrial, that are highly sought after by our economic development department, how is the code going to be, how are those properties going to be affected by the code? So I realize I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. One, I was just up here criticizing, saying don't get too far into the weeds. And now I'm saying, wait a minute, let's start looking.
Chopping the weeds,
yeah, let's start looking at the valuable pieces of property. And I'm glad that you're all smiling and laughing at me.
No, you bring up a good point. So thank you for that. And I do think that, it's whether we want to think about it now or later, we're going to have to think about that and make it hopefully manageable and at least foreseeable for the commercial industry, the industrial places to be built and feasible. So
Can I say something?
let's, Ms.
No, that's
Councilwoman
fine.
Warren, here you
No,
go.
but Mr. Klein brings up an excellent point, is that, I'm going to just take that land off of Hot Springs and Jackson, you would be looking at a monstrosity of a wall that would visually be very upsetting to not only those driving, but the people that live there. So, I mean, I think we do need to do a little separation here and figure out what's going on.
Well, it would be screened by a building.
It would be screened
Right,
by, but
so-
still, it would be huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
My point was I just didn't want a blanket, it can't be this high.
Right.
I mean,
I
there are
understand what you're
circumstances that need to be thought about. I agree with you. If it was just the wall and the vacant land, terrible.
Yeah, awful. Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
That's why I suggested this only applies to hillside areas, not to the whole city.
But then, so that, I was thinking the questions back to the Jefferson and Madison, right? So is Madison, right, the properties that front Madison, would that be
That's
part
not
of?
in the hillside ordinance.
It might fit the definition.
No, it doesn't.
Mr. Long?
Don't mean to sound like a broken record, but you're talking aesthetics, you're talking design guidelines. It's not structural, it's not anything to that regard. So whether it's 30 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet, doesn't matter if it's citywide or in the hillside area. If you can't see it, what difference does it make? So the options are great. I'll give you an example. And also on Murrieta Hot Springs Road, there's existing commercial shopping centers that have at least a 25-foot retaining wall behind them. That's how they got their parking. If they didn't have that retaining wall, that business would not exist. They couldn't park it. So you would be looking at a thin strip of land along a major corridor in the city. So there are some areas that are very unique that could utilize this to maximize the benefit of the property. That's a perfect example. You can't see that retaining wall from the road. You can't see it from the backside of the business. So again, if you can't see it, what difference does it make?
Is there a scenario that maybe you can't see it now, but somehow later it would become problematic if a redevelopment or something came in that would change that?
I think if it's a design standard, that's what staff looks at. What is the potential of this being seen from other areas, whatever angle? If they're going to put a building in front of it, doesn't really matter. If it's going to front like the apartments on Murrieta Hot Springs in the 15, of course, need to step that back. They may have used one of the other examples, but again, even that one, given some time, it's planted, it will grow, and you won't be hearing about this in probably 5 years. But again, in their design guidelines, maybe a more mature plant should have been planted ahead of time. So it's not at that visual impact it is today. So again, regardless of where it's at, I think you're all talking aesthetics, and that's in your design guidelines or design standards.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Long. Sherry Monroe.
Good evening, Council. Sorry I was late and I didn't get a speaker slip, but they let me in, thank God. Just a couple of quick things. On our development projects, and maybe this is a question for David, don't you require a wall and fence plan as part of that submittal if wall and fences are proposed?
Typically, yes.
So doesn't that open the door for discretionary approval, review? And that generally includes any landscaping in color too, right?
I would just add to that typically applicants ask to be conditioned to provide the fence and wall plan after approval. That's been a little bit of a tug of war because we'd like to see what it looks like prior to that. Just wanted to ad-lib that.
Yeah, I'm sorry that there's a tug. It should be, during the review process. It's no two sites are the same. So that's the place to look at it. That's the place to address it. That's the place to design it and to have your discretionary review of those items. Okay, so the terraced walls, if they're street side, who maintains the landscape buffer between them?
Go ahead.
typically, if it's a terraced wall, yeah, hi. So an example on the upper left side, that would be a homeowners association. Typically, you do like a LMD lot, landscape, or it could be a CFD site type of thing, depending on how the developer sets that up initially.
So even if it's outside of the right-of-way, actually on private property, you would have the ability to do that with the LMD?
You could do an LMD lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious about that. And then under the definitions of all the walls, don't want to lose track of wherever we land with all this, the reinforced slope, which is actually defined by Caltrans. It's got a different batter. It should not, and I'm begging you to not have that definition lumped with walls, because it's not a wall. It's not a structural mechanical wall. It's a defined batter, and happy to share the Caltrans specs and ASHTO specs that define that.
Can we unpack that a little bit here before, is that something we have not considered?
We've talked about it. It's been on my consistent list of things that I'm concerned about. They're completely landscaped. It's not a wall. To have that style of wall lumped in with a standard retaining wall would incredibly limit our ability to be able to design sites. That's all.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
So just, sorry.
Moving on. No
We
more
haven't
public-
precluded that kind of wall from the ordinance being used.
You have not?
We have not, yeah, so it's an option.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our next question here. Council members Warren and DeForest emphasized using larger plantings of shrubs and trees earlier in the development process to provide more effective screening of newly installed retaining walls. We kind of just touched on that. We didn't have a timeline kind of established, so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, if there's some ideas on there. We also have our landscape consultant available too to speak to anything that you have questions on.
Thank you. Looks like we have Councilwoman Warren.
Okay, we'll use that beautiful wall on Hot Springs Road. Sorry, little pun there. They've replanted that wall 3 times that I have noted. Had they used larger plants that have a tendency to grow faster than a tree planted in front of it, or faster than the weeds, then I think this would have alleviated a lot of the problems that we are seeing on that wall right now. So when we emphasize larger planting of shrubs, I think we were talking about larger in size, initial planting, not small ones, but also ones that would climb or grow at a little bit faster pace so that that wall becomes more invisible sooner rather than later. Right. Now that wall, again, all at the bottom of it is all weeds now growing up to the wall and getting into the wall. While you have thin little trees hoping in 20 years that they're going to blossom and hide the wall, which is not going to happen for a very long time. So if you start larger with the planting, I believe that is what Dr. DeForest and I were talking about, with a faster growth pace, then that might take care of the visual of that wall. That's where we were going with it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, 1 gallon to, and you plant little ones, but yeah, they keep replanting it because they're dying.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday.
Yeah, I can have Jen come up here too. If you guys would like.
Yeah, I think we're going to ask our landscape architect come up to maybe try to give you or give us some guidance on maybe best practices on how to address that issue.
I think Mr. Holliday had a quick addition.
Before we go down that path too far, again, it seemed like the council agreed that we're focusing this only on hillsides.
So as we started down this process a while back, we also wanted to address the issue of citywide retaining walls, which is why the information is coming up. And so if you want to peel that off now, then we'll take it out.
I just think it's a bigger conversation that versus what applies to the hillside ordinance versus what applies citywide. Citywide has a whole bunch more that we might want to be looking at. And so I thought the council had agreed that we were going to split that off and we're only going to deal with the hillside tonight, which maybe we could get to part 2 of that hillside section as well. Because a lot of the comments that we're getting are, shopping centers and what about this, what about that? I wasn't even considering that.
Yeah.
And so I mean, we could be here all night if we're going to open that can of worms.
I think to move through the hillside efficiently, let's probably, if there is consensus among right up here, I think that is a good idea. We'll probably try to stay on track. I know retaining walls are a citywide thought, but
come back and do citywide later at another time?
Yes.
One bite at a time.
Okay.
So Jen Loy is here with us, and she's our city, consultant landscape architect. So Jen, if you have any maybe like best practices for addressing those types of walls?
I think that there tends to be a pushback on the landscape as the least important thing to the developer as it comes in for screening the walls. A lot of time those planter areas at the base of the walls, they have other things going on such as drains that prevent larger plant material, and those tend to get smaller and smaller as footings come in and other items. So it's sort of a tug of war there to get enough space for large enough plant material. And there's also a cost consideration once things go up over 36-inch spots about, it becomes craning costs and other things that developers push back on.
Thank you. I guess coming back up here, Mr. Holliday, is that you again?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, everybody's still in. Councilwoman Stone, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little, there's so many conversations going on tonight. We are all over the place. And the whole purpose of tonight was to talk about the hillside ordinance. And we're talking about developers. And we're talking about, larger plants. Let's just get down to the meat of the issue here with regard to the hillside ordinance. And that is, let's talk about the hillside ordinance as is. What is that? What is the hillside ordinance? Going back to, at the very beginning, this was an area that was mapped out that said that these particular landowners have to be in the hillside ordinance. And it was restricting property rights, in my opinion. We were telling owners that they cannot build on their property. And again, we're so all over the place. I think what we should do is identify exactly what the hillside ordinance is. What properties are in the hillside ordinance? Which ones are not in the hillside ordinance? Let's figure out what the landowner is allowed to do and not do on their property, period. And so, to me, this is such a waste of time, City Manager. I'm sorry.
Can I take a stab at bringing us in? I appreciate panning out to the big picture because I think you're exactly right. All of land use is really predicated on impact. And the things that belong in a residential neighborhood don't necessarily belong in a commercial center. And similarly, we started down this road with the original code with the idea that aesthetics have a different impact in town than they might up on a hillside. In a neighborhood, you might have a white house with a white wall and, and not a lot of cover from landscaping, and it's fine because it's sitting there next to a bunch of other houses. You might have a slightly larger retaining wall next to a Walmart or a highway, and it has less visual impact than what you might see with the scarring on some mountainsides not too many miles to the south from us, right? So that was the idea, is we want to balance property rights and impact. We already do this all over town. It's not the case you can do whatever you want. It's within boundaries, and those boundaries generally work. We get development, and we all see a wonderful growing community. So now here we are with the hillside ordinance. We've made a big deal out of things like standards, but really what we're talking about is, should the walls be a little different on the hillside compared to that context in town? You're giving us that guidance. At one point when we came in and said, does this also invite us to look at these same standards across the city? Because now we've seen like the wall at Murrieta Hot Springs. And the answer was yes. So we brought them back together, but I think what we're learning tonight is the answer might be yes, but we want to do the hillside and then look at any other standards because they are different. The contexts are different. So now we're really left with just a couple of things, and that is how do we use things like colors, materials, landscaping, and height to minimize some of that visual impact a little differently on the hills than we do in the other areas of the city. And we've gotten pretty good guidance on how to do some of that. I think we're actually really, really close to the end with a couple more questions to just refine things. So you're right, we're a little all over the place. That really is the big picture. I think we've now got some good guidance on walls. I think the comments that are coming in about exceptions are good. It's actually in the staff report, by the way, and there's a lot there, so not blaming anybody for not pointing it out. But it's exactly right that if nobody can see the wall, does it matter?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's completely covered by landscaping, who cares about the color?
Or like what Mr. Long said.
Yep.
If you can't see the wall from any direction,
right.
Are we going to put, all these restrictions on the visual?
Right. So I think conceptually, you've given us the direction. We don't want to trample on property rights, but we might want standards to be slightly different in these areas that aren't huge in the context of an overall project. Wall, color, material. And I think the way it maybe should be written to capture council's intent is to say, to Mr. Long's point, that the goal is to preserve some of the aesthetics of the hillside. If you can do that with muted colors or the orientation of the structure to the lands, the topography, or by covering it with plants, et cetera, then that works for us. We're in an environment where it's harder and harder to do that subjectively. We need some objective parameters to give guidance, otherwise people go in blind. But we can write the language in such a way to capture, if you can do this in kind of some combination of these things, you can get some approval by the director. And all the extreme cases are they're just gonna go. It's those middle cases where the developer says, I think I've mitigated the impact enough, and staff says, I really don't think you have.
But you're saying developer.
Yep.
These, that's what we have to address. The hillside ordinance, are we going to allow a subdivision in a hillside ordinance? Or is this really for the landowner just to understand what they're allowed to do on their property? This is where it's confusing.
It's both. And I think especially in the concern of larger development where the impact could be very large. Again, noting the area to the south of us where the hillside is just clear cut and gone.
Right. So let me ask you a quick question. In the original map that David and his team proposed, let's go back to the very original map. It included Alan Long's property and included Mr. Hollingsworth. God, I'm saying Holiday. Their property is impacted on what they are allowed to do. I do not want to allow Alan Long to sell to a developer to have high-density development on his property. So we're dealing with two different issues here. Let's identify all the property that you wanted to put in the hillside ordinance, and let's just start with, are we going to allow high-density development, or are we not going to allow high-density development? And then from there, if we decide that all these properties, no, we're not going to do high-density development, then why are we even doing some of this?
I think that's largely what we've done. So in identifying the areas that meet the definition of hillside, we've cut out most of the city. The questions we're asking really aren't as big as what kind of housing would you allow, in part because some zoning and things are going to take care of that. This is actually smaller than that, which is what are the aesthetics that should kind of accompany development in these areas. Staff did some work in the staff report. I don't know if there's a slide on it to demonstrate how many properties are included. This is not really as small as it might seem. It seems really small because we have some great stakeholders that come in and give us points of reference for properties we know. But there's actually a substantial number of properties that could be developed at some point where we want to say, should it just be a little more thoughtful than what we put in town? Smaller walls, materials that blend in, and a little more landscaping. You really are splitting the hair now on just those few things, and then we're really one question left, which is where do they apply? Developed, undeveloped, disturbed, undisturbed, that kind of thing, and then we're done. We're actually close. You've gotten us 85% of the way there already by creating the map, addressing specific plans, and all those things we've already done. we're just right there with these last few issues.
Thank you for that context, Justin. As always, you do great kind of deciphering what is very cryptic sometimes. I think I'm very aligned with Ms. Stone's comments that we want to make sure there's not going to be problems like we have seen in other places, and also not be restrictive of private property rights. You know, Mr. Hollingworth is my neighbor. I love him to death, but I wouldn't want something crazy like some bright pink wall or something. So I think the design standards, they're going to form and fit when, like, we already are kind of there.
Yeah.
And so the context of we want to help guide, protect, you know, the visual component, but also not be restrictive or cost prohibitive in development scenarios.
One last thing to leave with council that I think is really important. Codes are written and then tweaked and rewritten all the time. You will never think of every possible use case. In fact, to some extent, the noise is those use cases. What about here? What about there? What if you can't see the wall? What if you can? What if never ends? At some point, I don't want to say you have to trust, but our job has been to interpret what you're saying, especially those outcomes. Don't trample on property rights, but don't let some big monstrous pink wall show up in the middle of our hillside. We've internalized that and developed what we think are reasonable guidelines already, knowing that we have that direction. We're not going to get it perfect, but if you miss by making something a little too strict, someone's going to come forward and say, you didn't think of my use case, and we are going to be able to take another bite at the apple. If we're not strict enough, and something goes up that we say, how did this happen? And I hear a few people saying that in the context of walls that have recently been built in the city. It's there forever. So at some point you say, we're really close. We can't think this through so thoroughly to perfect what is already very close to, you know, perfect or good. And you will hear if we've done something that makes a property unbuildable or something like that, and we will be able to address it.
Thank you very much for that. Coming back to Councilwoman Warren.
Thank you. I'm going to circle back to the plant thing really quick. Our landscape consultant is the expert on plants. I know how to plant my front yard. I do not how to plant a wall or a hillside or any of that. So giving clear and concise options that we would allow gives them an opportunity to put in what is economical for them and is pleasing aesthetically for us. So I think everything needs options for people to have a choice. And I think that doesn't stomp on their rights, it gives them more latitude.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think now we're going to go to some public speakers. First up, we have Mr. Hollingsworth.
Holly.
Holly.
Your neighbor without a pink wall.
My neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just on the subject of the retaining walls, before we leave that, I would like to make the observation that it seems as though all of the comments, both from the council, from the public, have been about architectural standards, about aesthetics, and so forth on the retaining wall issue. And I think the previous speaker said it best, was that kind of belies the fact that this probably should be an ordinance adjustment to your fences and walls area, maybe with some interplay with landscaping. So that's my comment on that. On the overall picture, I can't comment. I don't know enough about the specifics of where the ordinance is today on the hillside ordinance. Just that I think the comments by Councilmember Stone are appropriate in the sense of, you know, if you look back at how we ended up with this hillside ordinance, that was to protect the escarpment, the plateau, and the ridge lines. And unfortunately, it was either not written well or it was interpreted incorrectly, and it applied to some places and it caused a lot of problems. So this effort, that as long as it has been going on, is an important effort to make something that has largely accomplished, if not completely accomplished, its original goal, and two, remove an impediment that has created a lot of complications and cost and missed opportunities for the city of Murrieta and its property owners and residents. So I think moving towards more complexity, as this has seemed to do throughout the process, is unwise. We ought to be moving towards removing the complexity that exists in the existing ordinance. And that's, you know, I think that's something that we started off with in this process is very admirable on the part of the previous councils when we started in 21 and the staff. But I think the effort should be into how do we make it perform better and yet retain some of those aesthetic guidelines. If I need to build a house and I need to flatten the top of the hill or flatten the pad out and make a tremendous giant cut in order to meet the goals of the current ordinance where you have to have this much showing and that much angle and all the things that, you know, a mathematician can't figure out, versus an ordinance that actually allows for what is a design that's recognized throughout Southern California of a smaller cut into the hill, but you have a walkout basement or a walkout garage, and you can make that a lot more aesthetically pleasing. You don't have that, you don't allow for that now. My final point would be that I hope that you would also preserve the ability for property owners like us who are currently moving through the specific plan process that we have some latitude there, that we have all the latitude currently allowed in specific plans to be able to come back to you with a really high quality project that is going to have retaining walls. They're going to be really nice retaining walls. Some of them you won't see. And you're also going to have a really high quality landscape process, a plan within that. And then you're going to have some unique architectural designs that are going to fit very well within the natural environment, fit very well within the city of Murrieta as far as housing choices and some really nice architectural designs. So if you preserve that with specific plan, keep moving towards simplicity, not more complexity. Stop trying to put a square peg in a round hole on the retaining walls and move that in the right part of the ordinances of your existing aesthetics and gates and fences and walls. Thanks very much.
Mr. Klein.
I'm not sure what I have to say pertains particularly to this. It's more about the conversation between Councilmember Stone and the city manager. So is this the time that, forgive me, but I'm going to go all the way back to how this started, because it is in the staff report. It was some questions that I had up. So I think it was a project that came before Planning Commission, and Mayor Lavelle, you were on the Planning Commission back in 2018 at the corner of Jackson and Nutmeg. And it was approved by Planning Commission, and a retired city employee that actually plan checked it in engineering after he retired came and spoke before the Planning Commission and ended up working with a group of neighbors that challenged the project and appealed it to City Council. And through our research of the Hillside Ordinance, which, by the way, that retired engineer that plan checked it never brought up in the comments that the city had a Hillside Ordinance. We discovered that the city's Hillside Ordinance was indefensible based on how you calculate the slope, even though Jackson or Nutmeg had cut through the intersection. If you drive there now, that's a manufactured slope, as is Jackson. So that goes to that goes to my question and or comments about developed versus disturbed, because right now under developed versus undeveloped hillside properties, and it's the slide that Chris showed with the number of parcels. It says, for context, the following information provides an overview of the number of parcels located within a hillside area overlay, categorized according to the status of either developed or undeveloped. And then, I went to definitions, I went to AI, and asked, what's the difference between developed and disturbed? And according to AI, in the context of development, it says developed is anything with a structure, disturbed, grading doesn't matter. And I would beg to differ. And so I drilled down on that, and it talks about mass grading would be considered, is where what they call the point of no return. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody illegally grades on a hillside that that's undisturbed, you know, if it's an illegal grade, but if someone has pulled a grading permit but has not built a structure, that parcel should not be subject to the hillside ordinance. Also, under potential risks in the staff report, it talks about the first bullet point, incremental visual change. Exempting development parcels may allow future additions, grading, or walls to occur without the design controls that address long-range visibility, potentially resulting in gradual but cumulative changes to hillside appearance over time. So someone who's built, permitted, and now that we're changing the code, if they come in, they may not be able to. I mean, isn't that, to me, layman term, that's tantamount to a take. We can't do that. We talk about property owners' rights. The next bullet point, and I'm going to apologize, inconsistent visual outcomes. Similar slopes and ridgelines could be subject to different design expectations based solely on development status, leading to uneven visual patterns within the same hillside area. We already have that. I've mentioned several times before, had the hillside ordinance been consistently applied to every project, the Holiday Inn Express would not have been permitted to build. And I'd venture to guess that the wall that you all have talked about on Murrieta Hot Springs Road would not have been able to build. We would have had far fewer than 900 apartments going up. My last point for now, further down bullet points, says exempt from hillside standards. For parcels that are considered fully developed, does the City Council wish to establish specific development threshold in order for a property to become exempt from the hillside overlay standards? What is fully developed? And then, I'm sorry, there was one more about when it comes to interpretation or definition. And this goes back under developed to the page that says developed versus undeveloped hillsides, one of the further down bullet points. Limits the extent and scale of grading. Standards require development to follow existing topography and avoid excessive cut and fill. Who determines what is excessive? Are we going to say that it's X number of cubic yards, or who determines that? And so it's not so much that we define this for staff and for a developer. The flip side of it that we have to be careful of is exactly the point that I talked about the project before, is it has to be so bulletproof that it can't be challenged, right? So excessive, if we don't define what excessive is, some group could come in and say, staff, you didn't do your job. We find that to be excessive. And then you have a developer not wanting to roll the risk going before court and having a judge determine what is excessive. So that leads me back to, we haven't applied it consistently. There are very few areas in the city that are left, in my opinion, that we need to protect. Many of the properties that Mr. Long has talked about before, already protected by MSHCP. The property that Mr. Hollingsworth already talked about, already protected. Previous meeting, I talked about another project over here, specific plan, that is my biggest concern that we should be looking at. And finally, one of you mentioned the Murrieta Hills project earlier, but I don't know if it was Alan or Mr. Hollingsworth that leaned in forward my ear and said, look over the hill and what do we have from the Murrieta Hills project? We got Greer Ranch. So, I think we need to go back after all the hours that staff has spent and all the hours you have spent and the hard work and those things. We need to go back and just say, you know what? Let's find these specific areas, not these 319. I think we go to the map that staff produced. We identify which parcels are protected by MSHCP, We figure out which ones aren't, if those are specific, but then we looked at these big pieces over here and we say, no, we want to protect those. Other than that, we abolish this map. It hasn't been, it's not equitable, it's not fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long.
So I think I know where the city manager is going with the parcels, but I do want to point out there are quite a few parcels within the map. However, just under 500 are already developed according to your numbers. And then you're talking about 81 that are undeveloped. On top of that, 30 of those 81 are in the MSHCP criteria cell. So they're dealing with some conservation constraints one way or another. And then out of those 81, the other where your code may give you some protection from building the monstrous building is it's likely in those areas they are on a slope that would not allow for grading. And if you wanted to do pilaster homes like the Hollywood Hills, your development code standards prevent that from happening as well. So there's other areas in your code, and then there's areas that are just inherently protect from building these things on the hillside. So, and I appreciate everything staff has done. I know they're trying to, meander through this, and I think, unfortunately, not to their fault, they've been told to fix a leaking pipe when the foundation really needs to be fixed, and that's in the general plan that talks about the conservation element and calls this out. And then here's a question for you. In that same area of your general plan, the conservation element, in the same paragraph, I believe it's the same sentence, and the same context talks about conserving ridge lines, and then also includes the valley floor, talks about conserving the valley floor. We've been working on this since 2021 for 81 parcels, and in our valley floor, I think there's a lot more, and I want to know what we're doing for that.
Sherry Monroe.
She looks surprised.
I love what you guys are doing here. I think we've seen a lot of progress since we started this. And there's been a lot of takeaways, and that's always the most important thing to me in any meeting, whether it's a public meeting or just a meeting among friends. What are your takeaways? And the takeaways I'm seeing here is that the hillside ordinance should be pulled out separately. And I think we're all in agreement on that. As long as that moves forward as a separate item from specific design standards and some of the other things we've talked about with the walls. I think we'll get there. So, but yeah, we're desperately in need of a map that provides absolute guidance on where we're going to apply this. So faster is better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What's next?
I guess we could, we kind of covered a lot of stuff. We talked about exceptions to this process, but I guess that's part of a bigger discussion. So we'll table that conversation. We do have our landscaping folks here, like, that came up before. Last time there's questions about fuel modification zones and fire as it relates to landscaping, so we can kind of walk through that if you desire that approach.
Do we have enough time for that? 5? Yeah? Okay.
All right, so so we do have our zone 0, it's 0 to 5 feet. We have zone 1, as illustrated here, and there's clusters of trees and shrubs you can have. Zone 2 provides a more broader fuel reduction buffer. And Doug with our fire departments here, and he can speak to kind of more of the specifics of this. Because in the hillside overlay, it's mostly in the very high and high fire zones, so by default, you're going to be kind of having to follow this stuff anyways. So Doug, if you could come up, that would be great.
After the last hour and a half, I'm not sure how great this is going to be, but we'll see what happens.
Not with that attitude. Come on.
Oh, come on. You got this.
If you could walk through maybe the different zones, that might be helpful.
Yeah, so the state hasn't adopted the zero zone yet, but obviously, as we all know, the importance of it, the value of it. It's been vacillated back and forth a little bit. I believe in it. I think science has showed that it works and it's effective. I would think within the next 6 months, the state will come out with some type of watered down version of what they initially said would happen. I do believe, again, especially in the areas that are in the high and very high fire zones, that it's very appropriate. We always say our motto here, neighbors helping neighbors. We need some help to help prevent or stop a fire from getting into folks' properties. And again, we're talking new properties. The state has talked about in the future they're going to go after existing properties, but we'll see if that happens. We're just trying to get have a baseline of a better way to work with each other in the sense of trying to provide protection for our community. So I think there's a lot of models out there. CAL FIRE has done a great job. Talk about tree spacing. I believe in that. I think most people in the state believe in that. So at least in the fire service side. And I would encourage that. I think it's appropriate and forward thinking for our community. I really do. Yeah. So that's really all I have.
I appreciate it. I don't know that we're going to have many questions on this. Got one?
If I could, is there a certain kind of tree that is more combustible than a, let's say an evergreen or eucalyptus, because I know those are pretty combustible, or would those be wise to be prohibited in some of these areas just to maintain a better clearance area or least factor of them blowing up and causing more fire?
Yeah, they really would. The same with palm trees. Many of the palm trees are pretty bad also. So, okay. But I think this is, this is an elephant. You take a bite at a time.
Right.
And you figure out how you're going to move forward, especially with existing. New construction, I think with our new wildland urban interface code, we have the ability to address that and take some of those on. I think the tougher challenge will be going back to people that have, existing shrubbery around their homes and telling them. But I don't, I'm not sure the state's going to do that. They talked a big talk.
They did.
After the fires, and I don't see them walking the walk.
Okay, so I was just wondering where you were at on that, because there are trees and shrubbery that are way more combustible than others, correct? And so that'd be something we probably need to look at in the fire high danger zone. And that's my opinion.
And we have a plant palette that speaks to what is allowed and permitted. So obviously we would encourage people to look at that if they're going to replace trees and get rid of some of those fire hazardous trees.
So I recently went to Mr. Holliday's new home, and there's not a tree in sight anywhere on his property. So he built his correctly, it seems.
But he's got a lot of firewood.
I've got, I did at one time, although I have 4 trees spaced 40 feet apart going in that are probably 80 feet from the house.
But at least your house will look better if a fire does occur.
Oh, yeah. And Councilmember Warren, the fire department has a list of acceptable ground cover trees, shrubs in high fire and very high fire zones on its website, which I used, which it applies only to new construction.
Right.
But I use that list and hand it out to my landscapers.
Should that list be part of, in a high fire zone area, part of things that you cannot put in there?
It is.
Is it in our ordinance? Is it in our code?
It's in our fire code.
Okay, so that would be in there, it would supersede, and that would, okay. I just want to make sure, because I didn't know. Thank you.
I think we're,
Yeah, do we have an open policy question on this item?
Just if we had consensus direction on potential screening standards related to landscaping and the high fire zone. if there was any, because we were kind of asking about what types of shrubs might work for screening different structures and that sort of thing last time. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, just to add maybe a little more context to that. So the discussion that we were having, with the council was, using landscaping as a screening methodology, and then we didn't have quite the understanding of how the fuel modification requirements, would stack up against the screening objectives that we were trying to accomplish. So we've got a general, sense of what can be done. And so, Chris, could you back up to the overall fuel mod zones?
Sure. So
one of the things that I had liked about this graphic, and it's, the context isn't going to apply to every, single property, but, between, if you could take the outer ring, 60 to 100 feet to the home, you've got all these kind of bands of landscaping that could be possible to help screen structures, assuming they're at the highest or the most visible point on the property. So there is an opportunity to use landscaping and trees and shrubs in conjunction with the fuel modification requirements and whatever the state potentially winds up, with to help accomplish that screening. And so, at least I think we're just looking really for confirmation that you're okay with this, kind of a concept as a way to screen, structures that get built in the hillside areas.
Yeah, Mr. Olney has a question, but I think we can give you consensus after that.
Yeah, it seems common sense to me, but I'm going to verify anyhow. Homes that are at the top of a hill are more at risk for a fire as it moves up the hill than houses that are at the bottom of a hill, correct?
That's correct, Councilor.
And the hillside ordinance, all the parcels that we've talked about in the hillside ordinance are at the top of a hill typically, or close to it, correct?
So they're going to be higher in elevation.
Yeah, and they're all in a high or very high fire severity zone. So they're already subject to, if they're new construction, they're subject to the plant list that we already have, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, we already have that plant list in place. They just have to use it from that list to do the screening. I don't think we need a special thing in the ordinance for that because it's already called out in the fire code.
Well, I think, specifically for the planning side of it, there was a proposal to, maybe have enhanced, landscaping, and that maybe didn't follow the fuel mod requirements. So now that we have a better understanding of how those regulations would affect screening, I mean, basically we'll do the best that we can in working with the homeowners to try to screen those new structures. And obviously it's going to have to fit within the context of the fuel modification requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Klein, come back up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall at the last workshop on this, I talked about invasive species, specifically eucalyptus trees and other trees that are high fire, and maybe Fire Marshal Stroh-Snyder, when I'm done with my comments, can talk about that as well. But it seems to me we have basically a tree preservation ordinance, right? And so there's a very technical aspect on how you measure a tree, and if it's so big, you have to mitigate it 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 6 to 1. And if you have to plant too many trees, you can write a check for that. Seems to me, and I used the term double dipping last time, it seems to me that if a property owner, whether it's residential or the tree preservation ordinance, I don't think, going off of recollection, I don't think it applies to single family, but nevertheless, seems to me with all the fuel modification and increased fire and insurance thing, it seems to me like if we're gonna start drilling down on this stuff, we probably should go ahead and create a list of trees and species that the fire department would like to see eradicated I don't think there's a list that there isn't a list that says that they can be eradicated without mitigation. If we take out a tree that's whatever, 12 inches above breast height, you know, you've got if it's an oak tree, well, oak tree wouldn't apply, but I'm specifically talking to eucalyptus trees, okay? We don't want them. We can't, if someone wants to come in on a commercial project and plant eucalyptus, they're prohibited. They're not on the list. So why is it that when a developer comes in to develop a piece of property and he's taking those out and it helps our fire department, why is it that the guy's getting penalized for removing something that's a fire hazard? It doesn't make sense to me. So I would encourage you to work with the fire marshal, and if you agree, that you direct staff to come up with that, and let's start, you know, that mitigation. So, Doug, I don't know if you want to talk about that. I think there was another species you and I talked about that you didn't like. Was it weeping willows or cottonwoods or something like that?
I don't want to speak for Doug, but there's a point there where why would we ask an applicant to mitigate for a eucalyptus tree? It's non-native. That goes into temporal loss. You're losing the canopies in your trees, and at one point in time, those were considered favorable trees. Yeah. They also are a habitat, buffering and screening, but I would say that in Gearson Ranch, a couple blocks away, we got rid of about 10 pepper trees that were a big fire hazard, right, Doug? And we used the landscape plan to mitigate for those. There was no net cost. They just decided to increase the size of the trees that were native to replace the non-native. So I just wanted to check in that I think our policy is good that we retain a canopy of trees in our community. And that's how we mitigate for that loss. But this is very common with most cities that have historical trees like eucalyptus.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So looking at this picture to the right and looking at the picture to the left, and going back to the walls, when it comes to this type of development and not a subdivision that like Murrieta Hot Springs, it could cost the homeowner a significant amount of money based on your proposals in here. Where's that page? Where the high density, when I said, why can't we do all 4 of them?
Oh, the options?
Right. Have we looked into other areas that meet the same standards of the properties in seeing what type of product that they are using? Or is this what I'm seeing here with the subdivision development? Is that what is being facilitated in the rural area? Or is there another way? Because that could cost the homeowner an absolute fortune.
So we're not saying that the homeowner has to do this.
Okay.
It's usually, I mean, it's a way for land area to be saved to create a larger building pad. So it's an option. Otherwise, they're doing more grading.
And I remember, I think it was the development that's off of the 215 freeway that they were talking about. Is it the Hillside project?
Murrieta Hills?
Yes. There was discussion about how they had to remove a certain amount of brush to protect the development. Will that be required as well within the Hillside ordinance? So being that these homes are, surrounded by natural trees and brush and so on and so forth, and now we're talking about the type of landscaping to hide things because it's a high fire area, shouldn't we put a policy in that it should be, we should be grading a certain parameter away from the home to protect the home if there was a fire? Do you understand what I'm saying? Help me here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Counselor?
thank you.
Counselor Stone?
Yes.
Yes, so I'll use an example of Murrieta Hills. When they've come in and as they go back into that area, they take 100 feet from the property, from the residence out, And then that is all area that's mitigated. So it goes to their property line. So again, let's say it's only 50 feet. Well, you can't go onto the neighbor's property.
Right.
So you're limited there. But in those areas, we require them to have 100 feet buffer around there. And some that can be the street. There's other options for them to use. It's not just clear open space. So they get to use roadways, and then they plan for that. They put those in and use that as part of that buffer zone. So there are opportunities for that. And again, now all of a sudden you remove that vegetation, back to neighbors helping neighbors. Now our firefighters can be in there and they're in much safer condition. If you stick with zone 0 and you don't have anything combustible around the residents, it gives them a really good opportunity for those people to come back to their homes.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stone. Bringing back Mr. Long.
One more thing for you to think about. I mentioned this, I think it was 2 workshops ago. Not only does the screening from vegetation could conflict with the new fire code, so I'm glad you have the fire marshal here to explain that, making sure those match up. There's one other good point that you should consider, and that's the insurance companies. My neighbor just had to cut down their tree. So fully mature 50-foot tree was 30 feet away from the home, but the homeowner's insurance, they are also doing inspections. And they have their own criteria. In order for them to maintain coverage, they made them cut that tree down. So it would be interesting to know if the property owner did all the right things, screened their home, not within the 0 zone, was 30 feet away, and here comes the insurance company and makes them cut down the tree. So now are they in violation of your screening code? So making sure all of those work together. So.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Hollingsworth? No?
What he said.
Okay. Sherry, you coming back up? No? Okay, fine. Moving on.
All right. Thank you. So our last topic for tonight is developed versus undeveloped. We kind of covered some of this already, so just some overviews here. The general plan recognizes hillside slopes and ridgelines as physically sensitive and visually prominent. Hillside policies allow development but require responsiveness to site conditions, minimal landform alteration, and long-term character preservation. This is what we have currently in the general plan. Parcel status, we did do that analysis. The figures we kind of talked about already reflect that. Developed contains permanent structures and improvements. Undeveloped were largely vacant or retains natural terrain with very minimal disturbance. And then we pulled out specific plans are excluded from the analysis from that other screen. So we kind of covered this already. So I won't go into a lot of discussion on that. I should add, though, we do have projects in the pipeline right now with custom home lot proposals, so that are in the hillside. So we will see some review of this stuff in the future. So some key implementing policies. Currently with the hillside, it applies on site conditions, directs development to suitable areas, and the less steep and less prominent slopes. That's what's in our code today. Limits grading and extent, manages physical and visual scale, currently regulates retaining wall height. I won't go into that as we talked about that extensively. And then lastly, addresses biological resources through avoidance, fire hazards, and access and site stability. And this is all in chapter 1624. Appendix 2, attachment 9, kind of has a comparison side by side. It's in your packet. We provided this just for context and clarity as it relates to this topic area. Some examples of how the table should be interpreted. We have site suitability in non-hillside areas. Most of the parcels typically considered buildable and flat hillside areas. Developments directed to the less steep portions, with remaining areas potentially constrained by slope and other conditions. Grading hillside areas is subject to additional aesthetic criteria due to its prominence and other potential for altering natural landforms. We talked about retaining walls, so I won't go into that. We do have fire hazards and access. Hillside development, obviously, you might have more conditions related to slope for the fire truck to be able to get up to the site, fuel loading, emergency access, and all this is less common in flatter sites. And then visual context development on flatter terrain typically has less, impacts, obviously. In hillside areas, grading and structures may be visible over longer distances and time periods, which is, the need for additional design considerations, such as landscape and landform, grading design techniques, such as contour grading and other similar methods. So this is kind of a summary of exempting developed parcels. One of the speakers kind of pointed to this before, so I won't go into too much detail, but you could have incremental visual change over time. You could have inconsistent visual outcomes, reduced ability to manage scale of projects without those tools in place. You could have more ridgeline exposure. And then after, you could have substantial alterations to topography, which cannot be undone once the project's already done. Potential trade-offs. So if you have, by removing developed parcels, could reduce overall requirements. You could have clear distinction by development status. Standards would apply primarily to the initial development rather than subsequent changes. You could reduce discretion review. And then we're kind of at our key policy questions. There's 4 of them here. And then I can just walk through each of these. So we got no change in current status. Should properties in the proposed overlay zone continue to be subject to the hillside standards to maintain the current general plan approach to hillside management? So, and the second one is exempt from hillside standards. For parcels that are considered fully developed, does the City Council wish to establish specific development thresholds in order for a property to become exempt from a hillside overlay standard? So those 2 topics we can kind of talk about at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Do you mind if I, just for the sake of kind of extreme clarity, because we've heard council say and stakeholders, look, for properties that have already had a certain amount of development and maybe they've got a house, the area is graded and they want to put up an ADU or something like that, we don't want to impose a lot of brand new kind of standards in an area that already has the visual impact we're trying to protect, right? That's the concept. So I think the question before council is, what is the threshold by which someone becomes exempt? Is it simply we've developed something, anything on the property? We've got 40 acres, there's a small home in the corner, now you can put other homes as long as you're not subdividing anywhere else, any other structures anywhere on the property because it's just been developed somewhere? Or are we saying if the areas that are already disturbed are exempt, but the areas that are still natural are not? Or are we saying only those properties that are fully developed end-to-end are exempt? And I know those things need further definition, but those are your bookends, right? What is it that really triggers that exemption? And for what it's worth, if you're really trying to balance the property rights and the aesthetics, one potential standard to look at is disturbed. The stuff that's still natural, some new standards apply. The things that there's already been some grading, there's already existing buildings and the visual impact is present, adding to that a little bit, maybe not as big of a deal. That seems to be the standard you're going for. So I throw that out there, but that's the question.
Thank you, Justin. I completely agree. And I just want to reiterate, you hit the nail on the head. The definitions of what we're going to call disturbed, what we're going to call developed, that has to be, in my opinion, bulletproof. Because I wouldn't know what I would be approving if I'm using the word disturbed, if my disturbed meant what yours does. And I just want to be very clear about that. I don't know the answer. I just know that I would like there to be no ambiguity in that. Mr. Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree 100% that the definitions have to be, as one of the speakers mentioned, what's fully developed. And I don't think I would want something in the code that says the property is exempt. Maybe an area that's already been permitted and has a structure on it could be exempt, as you mentioned. But if it's requiring a new permit, maybe there's a percentage of increase in the size of the structure that could be exempted under a previous permit, but the area that's undisturbed of the rest of the parcel would not be. That makes sense?
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Stone.
Thank you. I agree that there should be a definition, but also I would like a definition with regards to not necessarily the ones that are not disturbed, But I want to make sure that those property owners, if they do decide to build a home, 5 years from now, that they're allowed to do that. So I want to protect the undisturbed property owners as well.
Would those be entitled already?
Again, I think we're saying there are slightly elevated standards in these areas when it comes to aesthetics and preserving the aesthetics, the walls, some of the colors, materials, et cetera. But even some of those, if you're just expanding in it, like using this disturbed concept, if you're just putting on an addition to the home and, that maybe that's exempt even from those slightly elevated standards. In the natural areas, if you were to go with this disturbed and undisturbed, you can still build, but we want there to be a little bit of thought into the wall and the color and some of those things. Landscaping, if it applies, but that's going to be harder and harder given our high fire severity areas. So we're using the combination of those tools to both facilitate building in a way that has slightly less impact in the area where potentially the entire city can see it.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Klein.
Thank you. Justin, you're on point. I agree with that. We're getting closer here. So the question I have, as I recall, the general plan says in its natural state. So how do we legally adopt something defining disturbed, undeveloped, because that's not the same as in its natural state. So the legal question that I have is, how do you do this without opening up the general plan? And then, to Justin's point, I look forward to working with staff and providing some input on that, because I think we could talk about, parcels and things. And I would just say that, anything that already has a building permit, a homeowner that can present a building permit or a grading permit or an ag grading permit, then they're exempt. And if it's a large parcel of 40 acres, maybe, we put a limit on that. Possibly, but the bigger, I think that's something we can work on going forward. But to me right now, the big question for you is that if I were sitting up there, what I want to know is, how are we going to do this? Because the general plan says natural state, right? That's all that the hillside ordinance applies to, is any property that it's in its natural state has to be preserved. And now we're talking about all these things developed, disturbed. So I'd like to have that reconciled. Thanks.
I have a question, if I may, please. What if a property owner bought a piece of property with an intent to build within 2 years? They would have their permits, they're ready to go. What if they change those parameters of that home and that permit now is needing to go out further and do a different type of build? Should they not be required to hit the new standards? Or should they, so that's what okay, so I have a permit and I'm gonna build to these specifications. But now I'm gonna change those specifications. Shouldn't they have to build to the newer standards if in place?
I think that's probably a legal question, and I think it falls, is it within substantial conformance or not? I mean, that's a gray area, right?
It is. So
yeah.
I was just wondering.
But,
Thank you. Thank you.
If you have a permit, you have that vested right to what that permit authorizes.
But how long is that good for?
For the life of the permit.
For the life of the permit?
Right, and then when it expires, you have to apply to new.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's a gray area that I just didn't understand.
But are we going to get an answer on the difference between natural state and?
Yeah, let's let Justin.
I mean, in the simplest terms, it seems to me, and would love to hear from our city attorney, that if it's undisturbed, it's in a natural state. If it's been disturbed, it is no longer in a natural state, and that's grading and development structures and other things.
But I think I agree that you could add definitions in your code that
clarify,
further define that, and that doesn't affect the fact that the general plan talks about something more broadly as a policy. So it doesn't open up the general plan, in my opinion.
Yep. Could I just add from my perspective, the zoning code implements the general plan. You can argue about whether or not it does it correctly, but the standards that are on the books today, in theory, implement the general plan. And so natural, is a very subjective if you're thinking of the hillside in the context of the entire community, I mean, you're going to get areas of the hillsides that are developed, but if you look, towards the west, for example, you're going to see a lot of undeveloped natural areas, but it just so happens there's probably a single family home on those properties, but that doesn't mean that it's
that would not be undeveloped then, right? If there's
right.
a home on it.
But if you're looking, I mean, so Chris alluded to hillside subdivision that we're currently reviewing. These are, I think, like 2-acre lots, so they're pretty big, and we're seeing pads that are maybe 5,000 square feet. So the other, plus minus 1.8 acres is remaining in a natural state, not being graded.
The parcel would be you have to qualify that the parcel is disturbed or graded or
however we're going to define it.
Yeah. What are you calling the thing you're calling it, right? Like you're defining the parcel or the house or the pad or whatever. Mr. Long. So number 6 for you?
Thanks. So. Didn't want to be up here at all. So the general plan does state natural state. The question was, how do we define disturbed, undisturbed? I think you've got to look to the general plan, and the intent was to say property in its natural state. Actually, take it a step further. It's a view shed portion. It was a view shed from the 215 freeway and other areas to see the hillsides, slopes, and the valley floors in their natural state. So use that as your guide when you're determining what disturbed and undisturbed is. Councilmember Warren, to answer your question, that's a great question. So say you are one of the 81 parcels that is undisturbed and privately owned. If you wanted to build on that, I think if you were undisturbed, you would have to abide by the slightly elevated guidelines that the city manager described. And as long as you can fit in those, then you would be able to exercise your property rights and build something within that. So that was sort of my point in talking about the 81 lots. I'm going to further show you in your current code, actually a zoning ordinance that prevents you from doing. Can you go back to the slide where you showed the tract homes lined up on ridge lines or mid-slope?
Oh, okay.
So you've done a great job. That's actually a poor example.
There was another
road back.
Right there. Okay, so talking about what could be done, that's not probable. So first you have to be one of the 81 parcels, right? And then on top of the MSHCB, on top of the hillside grading ordinance that we're talking about, you also have zoning. And the zoning in that area, which prevents you from doing this, is rural residential. And those 81 lots, and most of those 81 lots are going to be on a 2-to-1 slope that also prevents you from grading. So that is not probable. And also the zoning would prevent you from doing the apartments and these monstrous buildings that you talked about. Your design guidelines, your design standards prevent you from building too high, too wide, too close to your sight line and all of that. So that's not a probable outcome. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll skip that. Sherry?
Yep. Run, Sherry, run. No, don't.
My legs are short, it wouldn't help. Because we've been talking a lot about these acreage are more than likely going to be residential homes. I just want to remind you guys that a residential home is a use by right. It is not a discretionary approval. What is discretionary is confirmation that the current building codes are being complied with and that your general planning standards are being provided for. But even in MSHCP regulated areas of open space, that house by use is still a right. And they're required to allow a home to be built. So just thanks.
Thank you, Chair. That's all?
I think we have one more slide.
One more slide.
Power through it.
Okay.
We're almost there. All right. Number 3, So we've kind of talked about, is there an interest in distinguishing between minor property alterations and larger expansions, grading over a certain quantity, new retaining walls, significantly increasing the building area when determining hillside applicability? So that's your policy question 3. And then the last one, accessory building development. Should hillside standards apply to accessory structures or to ADUs on developed hillside parcels, particularly when there's grading or visual exposure involved?
So I could just add to number 3, what we're really looking for is there interest from the city council in creating exceptions? So allowing property owners to, develop, their property if it's already been developed and they're basically taking on, some kind of an alteration and whether or not the hillside standard should be applied. So it's essentially a carve out. If you're under whatever the line is that the city council wants to establish, if any. And so if there's, some leeway for, developing a parcel that's already developed, you can create that policy. We wanted to point that out to you.
Thank you. Mr. Holliday.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we talked about this before. City manager mentioned that somebody wants to increase the size of their home 10% or something. That wouldn't trigger a whole new hillside development review or anything. But if they wanted to build an ADU on a previous undeveloped portion of the property, then it would. And those numbers and those details will have to be worked out, obviously, before we do the ordinance. But yeah, I see if somebody wants to make an alteration or increase the footprint of their home or add a stall in a garage or something, that should just be kind of automatic and shouldn't apply to this. And leave it to staff to come up with reasonable thresholds for that we can look at when the code finally comes forward. And I do want to note a couple of things that Mr. Long said is about that picture couldn't be a reality. That picture, with all the homes side by side couldn't be, but on one parcel, under state law currently, I can do a house and an ADU and then an SB9 lot split and do another house and ADU. I could have 4 of that picture pretty close together because SB9 does not require any setbacks. Fire still has their ability to regulate the fire safety of those homes. But yeah, it's with SB9, there's a lot of opportunity there to have more than what was envisioned when this was originally written.
Thank you. Councilwoman DeForest.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to concur with Ron said. I agree, especially with the new lot splits, SB9, and allowing various different additions to dividing one home into 4 and really increasing the density. So I think that we need to make sure that we protect that. But also, the city had an ordinance a few years ago that was changed that said that you had to do road improvements for development over 700 square foot on a property. That was a huge impact, came up against us. I think that we need to make sure that for a property owner to add 1,500, 2,000 square foot onto a home, that's their discretion, and that should be allowed without any more regulations and, well, fine, double the size of the house. That's no big deal. I mean, that's when you do a remodel or a huge build on some property, that should be allowed. So the 700 square foot was absolutely a joke, especially for anybody doing a remodeling on a larger home. So I think that, and that ordinance is gone now. So I think that, we need to be aware of where we have been in the past and some of these constraints we put on development of single-family homes, right? It would have been a larger tax base. There would have been so many other things that, that house would have been generating for the city, more taxes, et cetera. And some of the old ordinances that we had were very prohibitive for increasing the size of, a home. So I just want to make sure that when we're looking at that, we make sure that we keep that in mind as well. So thank you so much, Mayor.
Of course, thank you. And I think everything you just said is the entire council is considerate and trying to be as protective as possible for those property rights to not be restrictive when appropriate. So that's all. Any last comments, questions before we move on?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I've got one based on Councilor DeForest's comment. So obviously acknowledging what you're saying at a residential home, you're going to double the size of it. Remember, a lot of what we're talking about is the hillside ordinance now. So we're talking typically in a high fire zone or a very high severity zone. So without water, we can show up with all of our firefighters. We don't have water, we're not going to put the fire out. So I just share with you that water and access are critical for us to do our jobs. So I'm just bringing that up. However the decision comes out, the decision comes out. But again, in order for us to do what we need to do, I think you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and make a determination. You know, is what they have, is it safe? Some of that could be landscape, other mitigation factors, but we still have to look at that because there's an expectation that we're going to show up and put the fire out. And that's what we want. And that's what they want. So I just share that. Thank you.
Enough clear direction in a mucky topic?
I think so. Thank you.
Clear, all right, good. Clear as mud? All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you want to ask if there was any final public comments on that last, or?
I was about to do that, yeah.
Okay.
Is there any final public comments? Mr. Klein, no? Long? Right.
He's getting his steps in.
Two things on SB9. I appreciate the comments, but SB9's been in effect, I think, for 3 years, and the city, I think, has processed 2 SB9s. So I don't know if it's that advantageous. It's also something that came out. They did an amendment to it, and if you're in an environmentally sensitive area and or a high fire danger area, you're excluded. So fire has authority to exclude the SB9 split in high fire danger areas.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hollingsworth, you can stay seated. And Ms. Sherry Monroe, thank you for coming. Moving on.
All right.
Zip your server. We have the council member request to add or withdraw items to future. Yes.
I'm in the queue.
Lori's in the queue.
Oh, I didn't see you. Sorry.
That's okay.
I see you now.
I know, thank you.
I see you now. Ms. Stone.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say thank you to staff. This has been, very educational. It's been a little painful since 2021. Councilmember Holliday and I were talking about what's worse, the code enforcement subcommittee or this. But I do want to just let you know that every time I hear you speak, I really learn something new. I'm sure even my colleagues, we just appreciate all the hard work that you have put into all of this, and we really appreciate all of you and the lively discussions as well, Mr. City Manager. But anyways, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm sure the whole council would echo you guys' hard work, and this is a very thorough conversation on this topic. So, 2 councils before us didn't figure it out, but we'll figure it out, okay? Moving on. Now we will go to the councilman request to add and withdraw items to future agendas.
And Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I've got a couple items I'd like to introduce to council.
Of course.
So the first of those, you might recall on December 2nd, we had some public testimony given by Mr. Phillip indicating that there was a property near him that was a chronic issue and highlighting an ordinance that he referred to from the city of Hemet, turned out to be Hemet Ordinance 1850, that was really effective at dealing with these issues. Proud that staff started to research that ordinance just within maybe 24 hours of that meeting. Unfortunately, what we discovered is Hemet had rescinded their ordinance many years ago after the Department of Housing and Urban Development had basically indicated that it was likely not constitutional and a violation of civil rights. So we've looked at other ways that we might be able to strengthen our nuisance ordinance to accomplish something similar to what that speaker had asked, but we really don't see that path forward at this point. So we'd ask council member, I can't remember, I think it was Councilmember DeForest who had requested the item come back. We'd request that that item be withdrawn.
And I'll withdraw that item or rescind that item, and thank you for bringing that forward and getting information.
She agrees.
And then one more item where we're looking for direction from council. On December 16th, Councilmember DeForest requested an item come back prohibiting the sale and use of kratom. We did bring that discussion back. It was interesting in that at the January 20th meeting, we were presented with a letter from the California Department of Health that had opined on the legal status. At least what we've learned is kind of the substance as a food additive or supplement. But we had misinterpreted kind of the content of that letter and the implications for whether or not the city council could or should adopt a policy. And we'd like to at least clear the record. And then after clearing the record on what that letter really says and what its implication is for the city, our question is, would you like to have the item back? This is new information you may find compelling or not in terms of bringing the item back. So we're not debating anymore the ordinance or a ban, only asking if council desires to discuss it further after the clarification is provided. So if that makes sense and there's no questions, I'd like to turn it over to the city attorney to update you on what we learned in the days after that letter was presented, so you have that information.
Sounds good.
Okay, so just as a brief update, we did verify that the letter from the California Department of Public Health was valid, and the code section, the health and safety code section it referred to is valid. When I looked at it quickly in the meeting, it didn't make sense to me because it's about food adulteration, and some of the people that were talking about taking pills and different things like that, so I didn't think that was the right section, but according to Public Health, that is the right section that it intended to refer to. And we know that another state agency, ABC, Alcohol and Beverage Control, they also agree and sent a similar letter to people who have ABC licenses that they believe that's valid and enforceable. We reached out to the DA's office. They hadn't heard about this. They didn't know that people thought kratom was, sale of kratom was a crime. They are still discussing whether they would actually prosecute that if Chief Henry's team were to cite someone for that. So that's unknown at this time. And that's essentially our update. No, there's no further update on the bill that would make the sale of it to anyone under 21 illegal.
So this is a familiar pattern that has happened with other substances, and when these synthetics, right, for years. The letter didn't use the word additive, as far as I recall, anywhere in it. So how does, when you pan out, how did that, or who decided that, I guess?
Someone at Public Health decided that. I have the code section in front of me, and it starts out, any food is adulterated if it bears or contains a food additive, and then it goes on. So it doesn't reference kratom. It's just saying you can't sell adulterated foods, as defined by another code it refers to. But again, it's not always sold in food.
And the letter, the code and letter only applied to food additives, for sure?
Well, the letter said they believe it's illegal under this code section, and so don't sell it.
Madam City Attorney, if you would also just elaborate, I think the crux of at least, one issue that was discussed when staff presented an ordinance banning the substance was that council should not adopt an ordinance banning if the state had already taken a position that it's banned. The distinction here is that it might be banned, through this lens of sale for food additives, but that doesn't address possession. It doesn't address possible loopholes that we don't know if they would be considered legal or not, like if somebody still sold a bottle of pills but said not for consumption or something like that. Would that be enough? And so the important piece here is, I think, the initial advice that you should not pass an ordinance because it was duplicative. Now, I think the interpretation is a ban of the substance would be different than what the state has said, that it's not legal for sale as a food additive. It's a subtle distinction, but one we want to emphasize.
Right, because as you touched on, this law doesn't address possession of kratom. It only talks about selling it, adulterated food, and the proposed bill is about people under 21. So the discussion before had been about banning it across the board.
The proposed bill is addressing people under 21, and it's also through the lens of food additives only?
No, the current code that CDPH is trying to say prohibits it is about food additives.
I see, okay.
The proposed bill, it's literally one sentence. I've never seen a bill this short. It says, any individual, business, or other entity shall not sell, offer for sale, provide, or distribute kratom leaf, a kratom product, or any product containing 7-OH to a person under 21 years of age.
Okay.
1088. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's both forms? Did I say that?
It's the kratom and the OH,
Any
the
kratom.
7-OH.
What says the product?
Is it okay to just dive into this a little bit? Right where you had it?
Start back there.
Products made from kratom plants, which are native to Southeast Asia, or the derivative 7-hydroxymitragynidine, I'm not going to say that again, have recently been appearing for sale in California business establishments, often marketed as dietary supplements, drinks, or gummies. Human consumption of these products is illegal, and such products pose opiate-like addiction and overall risk, according to CDPH. The federal government has taken recent steps to address dangers associated with kratom products, including FDA warnings and procedures, healthcare professionals, and public safety notices. On October 24th, 25, CDPH has issued a statewide consumer warning declaring that foods, dietary supplements, and medical drugs containing kratom or 7-OH are dangerous and illegal to sell or manufacture in California. ABC enforcement will target compliance at ABC licensed locations to keep Californians safe from exposure to dangerous and illegal products. And
It talks about medical use as well.
but I think when she talked about, it doesn't talk about possession.
But,
Right, so if a doctor prescribes it for you, that
Can I make a statement?
Sure.
So I think that one of the things that was said at the last meeting too was that kratom was a schedule. I think it was brought up as Schedule 2, and that they were going to make it a Schedule 1 eventually. But currently, California Uniform Controlled Substance Act, or the Federal Controlled Substance Act, it is not classified. It is not scheduled. It is not a scheduled. Even though it has opioid-like effects, they do not carry a specific legal designation of a scheduled opioid. The other thing that was talked about is police power. So California cities retain police power to enact more stringent local and safety ordinances. Other jurisdictions, including Riverside County, Moreno Valley, San Diego, Temecula, have already successfully exercised the power to restrict or ban this product. So I think things that were said at the last meeting were certainly interpreted differently, and I believe that having all of the information clear now, and with our city attorney making things clear on the interpretation of the letter, I think it is very apparent what we should do moving forward, and that is ban kratom and 7-OH.
You referenced two agencies that are not the DEA, and the DEA is who determines schedules, correct?
No, the California Uniform Controlled Substance Act and the Federal Controlled Substance Act, it does scheduling.
The Federal Controlled Substance Act is not an agency. So the DEA has a schedule of drug classification on the website, it doesn't pertain to.
Well, but it's not scheduled. The DEA has not scheduled it. So, but these are the two factors. These two acts would put it into an opioid, to a Schedule 2, Schedule 1 classification. That is the act that overwrites the DEA in how they would schedule an opioid. Sorry, I didn't understand what you're saying.
You have a federal act, and then you're referencing a state agency. Those are two different things.
So there's a federal and a state agency.
But you did not reference the DEA on that one.
Whether I reference the DEA or not, it doesn't matter. It's not scheduled. DEA did not schedule this kratom.
Okay, so, but you didn't say that. You said that act or whatever reference. I didn't know where it was coming from. So, do we know that it's not scheduled federally?
That's our understanding, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Ms. Stone.
I already commented.
Oh, sorry. We can bring up Mr. Public comments for Mr. Vrooman.
Thank you. And by the way, I love the new office hours here. It's very convenient. Listening to your conversation, I thought maybe I could help share a little bit of light here. I spoke with Ryan Sherman. He and I worked together when I was with the Sheriff's Office. He's the RSA attorney. He also represents the California Narcotic Officers Association and helps them with pending legislation and recommending any municipal ordinances and such. I'm a lifetime member of CNOA, and so I know a little bit about drugs and drug enforcement over the course of my career. So what he shared, and I reached out to my contact at the Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Julio De Leon, who Chad and I placed up in Sacramento as his legislative advocate. So between the two of them, they briefed me on what I'm going to tell you. So SB 768 was introduced in the Senate. 70H was going to be placed illegal in the legislation. It was removed by lobbyists. So now only nitrous oxide remains as going to be illegal. On the Assembly side, AB 1008, it passed the Assembly unanimously last year, Republican, Democrat, and now it sits in the Senate side to move through. It has to go through several committees before it ever gets to the Senate floor. Well, who's lobbying against it? The manufacturers that's taking kratom and enhancing it basically to make it 70H. Ironically or not, he told me, he said, there's a person that owns a manufacturing plant down in San Diego County. He lives here in town, and he owns 2 of the tobacco shops as well too. So just a local connection there as well. The chief did a good job on the 20th when he shared it's another tool in the toolbox. By you passing an ordinance, it gives him a tool. Self-regulation doesn't necessarily always work. The police department does decoy operations. We send juveniles in to buy tobacco products, alcohol products, and guess what? They sell. So regulation needs to happen at the state level, but it is the floor. The state can set the legal definition or the restrictions. You can place greater restrictions, just like you do in the marijuana dispensaries. To answer your question about the food products, so the FDA is the one that's been involved. They sent the manufacturer a cease and desist, and this is what Mr. Sherman told me. You can't distribute this anymore. They've also recommended to the DEA to schedule it federally. What these pieces of legislation that's been going through with up in Sacramento has been to schedule it here in the state. So right now, it's not scheduled either on the federal level or the state level, and that's what this debate is. I spoke with the sheriff. He would like it revisited. He would like you to pass this. I called and spoke with DA Hestron today. He would like you to reconsider and pass this ordinance and fall in uniform with the other jurisdictions here in the county that have looked at it. Temecula went a little further and restricted the sales of kratom. Other cities in Orange County, Newport Beach, San Diego, they've done the same. So ultimately, I'm advocating that you reconsider it and pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question about if the ordinance, and Mr. Henry, if you could come up, I guess, you'd probably be the best one to answer this. If the ordinance was in place and you caught someone with kratom, what would happen? Like, what criminal charge would that be? If it's a city ordinance?
We would write a citation for the violation.
But what does that equate to? Like, so we know what cocaine or heroin would get somebody.
The draft we had written was a wobblet. It could be a misdemeanor or an infraction, so the officers could decide based probably on the quantity, and or the judge. If we wrote it as a misdemeanor and the judge wanted to knock it down to an infraction, that could happen too.
We usually, I won't say side on the air of caution, but we usually side on the side of the stiffer level. So my direction would probably be, in most cases, to cite it as a misdemeanor with that discretion of making it an infraction if we wanted, but it can always get bumped down if it doesn't really kind of meet the requirements of the courts.
And you could not write a misdemeanor currently for kratom?
Right now, no.
And so if the county has restricted this sale and possession of this, correct? Is that what I think someone said that?
Yes.
Yeah. That means the county is going to prosecute these, correct?
In the unincorporated parts of the county is where they would have jurisdiction.
And just point of clarification, right now, you wouldn't have authority to cite for possession.
Correct.
But I do believe the letters that we've received from these agencies would give us the ability to cite for sale.
Yeah, I would ask that we confirm what sections that we would be citing for, I guess, at that state agency, that the California Department of Health would, what violation they would have under their ordinances.
And that's what our local DAs said that they're still researching, so that they could instruct the police departments how to write citations.
So this ordinance, as proposed, would only be a misdemeanor or infraction on possession only?
This ordinance?
Yeah, because it doesn't speak to sale.
No, we went two routes, right? We
Let me
first
find
discussed kind of limiting by age specific and.
Because this discussion is just about whether to bring that back, so we don't have it in front of us.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Let me try and pull it up.
Yeah, it's real muddy right now. As Mr. Vrooman said, there's bills that have been introduced and shot down and brought back.
On the floor, right?
The current one, the 1088, Assembly Bill 1088, still is only looking at a misdemeanor charge. There was some misinformation from last time about making a schedule, and from what I found, that's not happening.
It's not even on the
Okay.
It's not even on the floor.
The question
To make it scheduled.
So I just want to have some clarity, if we could. Scheduled drugs in the U.S. are determined and classified by the Drug Enforcement, DEA, and the Food and Drug, which work under the Controlled Substance Act, the Federal Controlled Substance Act. So that is part of the DEA's justification, and that's how they use to classify controlled substance. It's one and the same.
So one's an agency, one's the legislation, right? That's what I was referencing. I didn't know what that act was, and it references specific language that the agency drafts, correct?
The agency utilizes that act in order to schedule drugs.
Okay.
Is the question before us whether we want to bring it back and openly discuss it? I think that's the question before us at this point with all of us.
I make a motion, we bring this back to ban kratom and 7-OH.
I think we need to have a further discussion. I'll second it. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll take it back. I take it back. I took it back. No, I didn't second it.
Her motion was to ban it, not for discussion, so.
No, to bring it back for discussion to see if we want to do anything.
Sure.
That's what I would, yes.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look like the state.
Maybe the state will figure out what they're doing by then.
They can't figure it out now.
So do we have, so.
Yeah, you have three there.
Okay, all right.
I'll bring it
So
back.
just to bring it back for discussion.
If the consensus or majority of council is asking to bring it back, I know there was some rich conversation last time about council members that might require additional information and so on. I would emphasize that while I'm very confident in the abilities of staff to do research, to pull good information together that is put out by others, this is by no means our area of expertise. And so if there's any guidance of the kinds of things you would like to be included, if it's just an initial conversation so that you guys can have a discussion, that's fine. But if there's certain things you'd like staff to bring back as part of that, it would be helpful to know.
I think having some medical professionals here, at our last meeting, there were people in the audience that advocated for kratom in its natural form, but wanted to ban 7-OH. And I hear public safety, but if we're going to have this discussion and we're going to, and Ron Holiday asked the question, have we ever banned, what was the question?
Any drug.
Any drug, and he said no. I want this process to be absolutely fair, and I would like to see professional physicians, or, you know, I know that John Hopkins is doing their research right now. If we're going to bring this back and we're going to have a discussion, I think it has to be fair and with transparency.
I agree, and I think Mr. Henry, or Chief Henry, sorry, this is not a concern currently, although we're talking about it and other agencies are reacting and implementing ordinances. Murrieta doesn't have some.
Yeah, this wasn't at the top of our radar.
Okay.
Like I said, our narcotics units are really the only ones that have been coming across it, just in isolated cases, usually dealing with people that are utilizing for the opiate and, aspect of it, as opposed to just pain management and stuff like that. I checked with our school resource officers one time in about 3 or 4 years. I think we've come across it inside the schools, but with my, in discussion with my officers and my detectives, they have seen it affecting people negatively. I can't speak to the medical aspects of it, and I won't begin to say it works or it doesn't work. That's not my lane. It's just, when we come across it, it is usually in a negative way. We don't come across the people that it's healing.
Yeah. But we also don't know whether it was synthetic kratom,
yeah, we
whether
don't
it's in
know
its
enough
natural
to say
form,
anything.
and that's why I think, hearing from medical professionals. But I also like to have an analysis, a study done of how much time if we do arrest somebody and we go to court, what is it going to cost our police department to facilitate all of this, going to court, going to every wellness, gas station?
maybe
we should also consider cough syrup. And Sudafed. A few years ago, they were using Sudafed and manufacturing it into meth. Where do we start and where do we end on this subject?
We'll have to do a deep dive, and I think there's consensus now for sure. And Mr. Holiday?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer City Manager's question. So the things I would be looking for is the other legislation that's been passed by different agencies. I heard Huntington Beach pass something. I think Temecula just passed something recently, but theirs was not to ban it entirely. I think they put parameters on it.
Temecula?
Temecula.
Banned entirely.
Did they ban it entirely?
Kratom and 708.
I thought I saw something that it was only that was greater than 2%, the synthetic 7OH. Okay. But I'd like to see those legislations. Obviously, I would like some medical opinions if we're going to ban a substance, which we have never done before. I personally think it makes more sense to ban sale of something like we already have ordinances for in the city of Murrieta versus banning a substance itself. As Councilwoman Stone mentioned, the enforcement of that against an individual is drastically different than the enforcement against a business. It's much more manageable. As massage parlors, we have restrictions against. We don't have any dispensaries in the city. By state law, we do allow deliveries in the city. But those are decisions that we've made in the past of being more restrictive. So I would like something that looks at all those different parameters versus a wholesale ban.
All right, well, my name's been in the queue, so I'm going to go. So I do believe that we need to ask law enforcement. We don't need a doctor up here that utilizes a kratom. That's under medical supervision. That's like going to the fentanyl clinic, or the methadone clinic. That's completely different than what we're talking about.
But you're talking about possession. What happens if somebody has a prescription of kratom on them?
Prescriptions aren't written for kratom. That is not something you can have. That is a null starter. You can't have a prescription for kratom. You can't have a prescription for this is how fentanyl started, right? Fentanyl was like out there and then it got going. This is an opioid. This is a dangerous opioid, and we need to protect our children and we need to protect our residents of Murrieta from this drug. I think too, we need to process. We don't look if we process under the influence. How much does it cost us to process a kid that we arrest for, having narcotics on in school? Do we look at that? No. We shouldn't look at how much it costs us. What we need to do is protect our residents and
Those are felonies, though.
No, it's not a felony.
I'm
be a misdemeanor. What about?
I'm all for protecting the children. I have no problem anyone that's 21 years old and younger from getting kratom or buying kratom in the city of Murrieta. But with the testimonies that we received, there is beneficial medical use on the natural kratom. And I want a professional from the medical industry to explain to us the difference. That is our job, is to do our due diligence.
I do agree, if we're going to have opinions, I mean, I respect everything our police department says, but as he said, it's not his lane to speak professionally on like what the substance is, how it affects people. I mean, you'd want that opinion from the other side of the table.
Mayor, is it more like a toxicologist, like the person who works at like a lab that you want, than a doctor?
Maybe.
We could see if the DA's office has someone like that.
I might even propose that while we might find some people that can give that kind of expert testimony, there is a volume of literature on the subject, including some by bona fide peer-reviewed, medical institutions or research institutions. So I think with this general direction, which is to try to deepen our understanding of whatever, kind of medical or toxicological assessment has been done on the substance, some options in terms of what we see in the legislative landscape, at least some analysis on whether or not this would be a new demand, essentially a workload demand onto the team, or just another kind of item in our books. And we can bring back at least the start of that conversation. This is going to take us a little longer than, say, just drafting an ordinance and bringing it back. But this would be a start. And at that point, I think if council has a majority of requesting other information, then we would go from there. But this would at least give you a broad view of the landscape from which to make the next decision point.
I'd just like to clarify, I'm not saying whether we should or not ban kratom. What I am saying is it is up to us to have all the facts across the board, not just from law enforcement. I want to be educated about the issue at hand.
It's also important to educate ourselves.
Whether or not I agree to banning it or not, this is doing our due diligence.
Our due diligence is to educate ourselves as well, and not to be spoon-fed.
You're right.
We're going to bring this back.
Take your words.
Hey, we're going to bring this back.
Yeah, my words.
Hey.
Read.
It's fine. We're bringing it back. We'll get some more information. We'll make better informed decisions when it does come back. Thank you. That's all, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. So we've completed items 11 and 12, but now is the time for council member requests to add anything new, whether you want to withdraw or add anything to future agendas. There's no discussion on these requests. A brief explanation may be given. The merit of the items being requested may not be discussed or debated. Are there any council members that would like to add or withdraw? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor. Now is the time for reconsideration. A city council member who voted on the prevailing side of the original motion may move a reconsideration to consider new information or correct inadvertent errors on a non-public hearing item at the same or the next meeting. At this time, are there any requests from this council? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll take public comments for non-agendized or closed session item. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes unless previously approved by the clerk. Do we have any public comments?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. This time we will go into closed session. Madam City Clerk, would you please go over the closed session agenda?
Yes, thank you. The City Council will meet on 3 items. CS1, the City Council will conduct closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There is a significant exposure to litigation in 2 cases. Pardon me, I sound like I have a frog in my throat. This council will also meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. The city is considering whether to initiate litigation in 1 case.
Thank you. We will now recess to closed session. Madam City Clerk, will you please call order back to session?
Call order, call roll.
Call roll.
Thank you for calling the meeting to order, Mr. Mayor. Roll call. Councilmember Warren.
Oh, yes. Yes, here.
Councilmember DeForest.
Yes.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Holliday.
Yes.
Mayor Lavelle.
Yes.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. Madam City Attorney, would you please provide a report of our closed session?
Yes, Mayor. The council agenda identifies 3 closed sessions. The council only met on 2 closed sessions. The first was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2, significant exposure to litigation. The council only met in 1 case of significant exposure. The council was updated and asked questions and gave direction to staff, but no reportable action. The second item was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4, because the city is considering whether to initiate litigation in 1 case. On this item, the council was updated and asked questions. No reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is now adjourned.